Good morning, Bill Baeza and Dominique Saxa. As NBC ends its coverage, we begin ours, continuing it, the final farewell for President George H.W. Bush. You're looking right now at the train up in Spring that will take the president and his entire family to College Station.
As network coverage was leaving us, they were showing people departing from St. Martin's Church here in Houston, and the presidential motorcade is now heading down Memorial Park, and I know our Joel Eisenbaum is stationed there to cover the procession route. Joel?
Dominique, we're at the corner of Memorial Drive and South Picnic Lane. This is really the heart of Memorial Park, and I'm told this will be a very similar, if not exact same route as was done several months ago for Barbara Bush. And you can see what I believe is a state trooper's Tahoe coming down the road. The entire procession, which is for the family principally, to get from St. Martin's Episcopal Church to the train depot. As the crow flies, that's about a 28-mile trip. They're taking somewhat of a scenic route, and part of the reason for that, I understand, is because the Bush family adores this park. In fact, in his younger years, President George H.W. Bush used to run at this park. He wouldn't run the stretch that was along Memorial Drive, but his detail, Secret Service agents, would allow him essentially to run the interior parts of the park. And so he had a deep connection to Memorial Park, certainly one of the hallmarks of Houston. And we can see what is the very first vehicle is just passing me right here. That is a state trooper's vehicle. It is a procession which will continue eastbound on Memorial Drive until the Westcott area, and then they'll hang a left, I understand, and make their way eventually down the Hardy Toll Road into Spring to the Union Pacific train depot, of course, with President George H.W. Bush aboard. We saw a couple police cars sort of slow rolling through here just a few minutes ago. I don't see any cars following. I think we have a very good vantage point from this spot at the corner of Memorial Drive and South Picnic Lane. But keep in mind, this is essentially over 6+ days. We've seen planes, trains, and automobiles used in these ceremonies. This is what I believe is essentially the last motorcade by automobile for the president, as he will board that very special train about 28 miles from here in about 45 to 50 minutes, as I understand it. But this is a route where several people, and it wasn't well publicized, but that the public is gathering along Memorial Drive here. And with that, of course, you have HPD doing some measure of crowd control. They've got, and I'm getting a signal that way far down in the distance, yeah, that's right, you can see that the motorcade is now coming eastbound. That would be inbound towards downtown from, they had just crossed the West Loop.
Joel, can you give us an idea as to how many people are gathered there?
Oh, there's certainly a few hundred, which to me is somewhat amazing because I didn't see anywhere where this was publicized information, or this was well publicized at least as a spot to gather. So these are people, I've met several veterans here this morning, and let me just take a moment to take this in with everybody else as this motorcade gets ready to pass us. Houston police vehicles were leading the pack there with Special 41 stickers on their windshield. Some dignitaries are in this line, I understand, as well as the higher-ups with the Houston Police Department. In a moment of silence as the hearse passes me. Is out of my view at least, but there is still a long line of cars and trucks that are trailing behind it, including buses. These are family members, security details, and I understand a smattering of folks who are connected to the Bushes closely. And then behind that, they've got, boy, just all manner of emergency vehicles following up. right behind the president. I understand that they're going to be on Memorial Drive heading eastbound, what is, to me, at least a mile-long procession of vehicles, and then hang a left before they get to the Shepherd area, and then cut on to the highway and eventually make it up the Hardy Toll Road. It's Spring is their next destination, of course, to get on the train, Dominique.
Joel, as you have been reporting on the motorcade passing by there, it came to my mind suddenly that back in the 1970s, there was a place called Otto's Barbecue just as you enter the park in the direction that they're moving here. And I remember seeing Bush 41 at Otto's Barbecue. That was one of their favorite spots. It was the restaurant, the barbecue part, and then in the front of it was like a hamburger joint, beer joint. And he liked to sit up there and drink a beer from time to time with his old cronies.
I actually caught the tail end of Otto's Barbecue. I remember that. I did not know that was one of President Bush's favorite spots, but I recall the place as well. I think it's since disappeared, but I think this area, I mean, this entire area, as I understand it, was pretty special to the Bush family.
It was indeed. As you noted earlier, this is the same route that Barbara Bush took on her way to College Station, going by Memorial Park. Did you talk to any folks there?
Exact same route, as I understand it.
Can you give us a sense of what folks were saying that you talked to this morning?
Yeah, I mean, the essential question that I was asking, Bill, is, you know, why? Why did you come out here? Why did you take time out of your day to come to this spot specifically? And they said, look, this is the time that I chose to pay my respects, and this is how I wanted to do it. I wanted to watch him go by. I wanted to have that memory. And one of the women I talked to, is actually a retired lieutenant colonel in the Army, told me, I served under him. He was my commander-in-chief. This is the very least I can do, is take time out of my workday and come here and salute him as he makes his way home, so to speak.
That's right.
Beautiful,
and Joel,
beautiful sentiment.
You know, the same sentiment was echoed by those who were there at Second Baptist Church at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, waiting for shuttle buses, still even an hour-plus delay at that time, just to make it over to St. Martin's to be able to pay their respects there in the wee hours of the morning. It's that same sense of attachment.
I mean, this entire week, we've seen people making every sort of effort, I think, to pay their respects to President George H.W. Bush. I mean, people who are stopping what they are doing to take time out of their days and lives to make sure they pay respect to him properly in their minds.
Joel Eisenbaum, thank you so much for giving us our first look at the motorcade as it proceeds from here to Spring and the train station.
So at this point, that motorcade is now on Memorial Drive, getting closer into downtown. And we heard that they'll be taking the Hardy Toll Road, but first there's some negotiation through town. So for that, we've got our Jennifer Reyna standing by to talk about some traffic.
Awful lot of traffic out there today, Jen.
Yeah, thank you. Looking at the lunch hour rush, right? So I got a lot of emails from folks asking, okay, what's going to be blocked? Is it going to be 45? Well, you know, the route specifically was not released to the public for safety reasons. But what I can remind you about St. Martin's Episcopal Church, those closures lasting until 1 right near the church. So those of you in Tanglewood, for the duration of this time period, you should still take the alternate routes like Memorial Drive, San Felipe, and Westheimer, and plan a little bit more time into your route if you need to be in this area, because we still have Woodway shut down between North Post Oak out to Chimney Rock. So that means more traffic spills onto surrounding streets. So you heard that the motorcade passed right through Memorial Park. They'll make their way, continue down Memorial Drive until they need to cut over to I-10 and work their way up to 45, the North Freeway. I just checked some camera shots. Traffic is still moving along 45, making their way toward the Hardy Toll Road and then shooting north toward the Spring area. By the way, this is a fall sensor, so there are no slowdowns on the Hardy Toll Road right before the Beltway. As you would imagine, Houston Police Department will clear any roadway conditions that are in the way anyway. So that reminder of the closures near the church that will still affect drivers. Sage is still closed between Woodway and Tangle Lane. Riverway is still closed between Sage and South Post Oak, and those closures will reopen by 1 p.m. today. That final destination for former George H.W. Bush starts in Spring, and then the train shall take him through several cities up through the College Station area. And you are advised to stay 25 feet away from the train as you pay your last respects. Guys?
All right, Jennifer, thank you. We will be able to give you an aerial view of the motorcade as it makes its way up to the train. There's an airspace restriction right now, so our Sky 2 helicopter can't bring you that video, but in about 10 minutes from now, we will be able to do that.
Meantime, let's go back to the church, St. Martin's Episcopal, the focal point of today's service. As mourners are now departing, our Andy Sirota is standing by live. Andy, it was a beautiful ceremony.
Absolutely beautiful, very touching ceremony, Dominique and Bill. I want to draw your attention to what's happening here behind me. You can see many of the guests, nearly 1,000 guests attended today's funeral service. It was invite only. A couple of faces that I can spot out here in the crowd. Dikembe Mutombo, Yao Ming, actor Chuck Norris also here waiting in line to board one of these buses back to Second Baptist Church. Basically, here's how it worked today. If you lived west of the Mississippi and you were a friend or a former staff member of Mr. Bush's, then you got an invitation to be here to honor and celebrate a life well lived. The tone of today's service very different from the one that we saw yesterday during the state funeral in Washington, D.C. Former Secretary of State James Baker delivering the eulogy this morning. A friend of the late president for 60 years, he characterized their relationship more like big brother, little brother. He said the president was never someone who liked to brag, and Mr. Baker jokingly started with an apology, saying that's exactly what he was going to do today, brag on his dear friend and all that he accomplished in his life. He said that Bush 41 became one of our nation's finest presidents and our nation's best one-term president.
The world became a better place because George Bush occupied the White House for 4 years. He was not considered a skilled speaker, but his deeds were quite eloquent. They expressed his moral character, and they reflected his decency, his boundless kindness and consideration of others, his determination always to do the right thing, and always to do that to the very best of his ability.
And back live here now, you are looking at the guests getting ready to board the bus. I don't know if you can spot former Houston Mayor Bill White in the crowd. There's Chuck Norris. He just took a picture with some folks who were also standing in line. Bill, Dominique, a powerful yet moving day as Houstonians and people from different parts of the country came here to honor and celebrate a life well lived, to honor and celebrate the life of a man who dedicated his life to public service. Guys, back to you.
Andy, I think one special moment was hearing the rector talk about what kind of church members both President Bush and Barbara Bush were, even commenting on how they would give up their seats if they saw a mother with children, or giving the jacket off of his back if he felt somebody was cold. They were just that generous and unpretentious.
Yeah, I mean, this church, St. Martin's Episcopal, was their home away from home. They worshiped here for about 50 years, the past 50 years. I mean, they were like family to so many of their fellow congregation members, and they knew them so well. I mean, they forged really special bonds and really special relationships with a lot of the people who've been attending church here for decades as well.
And the rector of the church there, Russ Levinson, a very close friend of the Bushes. Andy, thank you so much for your beautiful recounting of today's funeral service there at St. Martin's. The airspace restrictions have now been lifted from our helicopter, and so we're able to give you a view of the motorcade as it proceeds now to Spring.
Yes, this is a Sky 2 aerial shot, and I'm going to lean over to Jennifer Reyna and see if she can give us an idea exactly as to where the hearse is. But I know it's going to make its way.
Crossing one of the bayous there.
Yes, it's going to make its way onto the Hardy Toll Road, not that far from now. So they theoretically could be on 45 heading north to cut over to 610, but we'll get verification on that. But it's a very slow crawl today. Traffic obviously much lighter than yesterday because we are now around lunchtime as opposed to yesterday's drive from Ellington Field into the church area, which happened during rush hour. So
Dominique, this is still on Memorial Drive heading into town, approaching downtown Houston. If you are familiar, they have already passed Waugh Drive. They are coming up to the I-45 split there off of Memorial Drive.
Perfect.
You gave us a mileage a while ago of the motorcade from here to Spring. Should take about, what, 25, 30 minutes?
Correct, just about. And the freeways obviously are going to be clear, so it's going to take about a half an hour. It looks like they are going at about 30 miles per hour or so. So from what I can tell, let's see if they're going to take that exit. Okay, if they were to have taken that exit, that gets you into downtown right by the police station and where 45 would connect to West Dallas. So they are continuing to travel inbound or eastbound on Memorial Drive.
And Jen, it looks like if they keep this pace, then they'll be arriving a little bit later than expected to the train station there. Like you mentioned, they're going 35. We don't know if they will speed things up once they get on the freeway.
I think that's a deliberate speed, just so that folks can see the motorcade coming by. And eventually, as we continue to look at aerials, we'll see people pulling over out of respect for this motorcade as it passes. I also want to give you a heads up that we will be able to give you an aerial view of the entire route from Houston to College Station. We'll be able to follow it in our helicopter. So from time to time, as we do stops in these towns with our reporters who are stationed there, we'll also be able to give you an aerial view.
So
Andy was talking. Go ahead, Jen, I'm sorry.
No, you can see this is right by our downtown aquarium. That's where the Ferris wheel is. This is Bagby here.
Right, at Bayou Place, that's right.
We'll be climbing up on the freeway here in a second. Andy was telling us a while ago that many of the celebrities and other guests who were invited, and I understand there were up to 1,000 people invited, are still at St. Martin's waiting for the Metro shuttle to take them back to Second Baptist.
Yes, Second Baptist Church. Our Haley Hernandez has been stationed there, and I'm not quite sure if she's ready to talk to us yet, but let's give it a go. Haley, are you available?
Hey guys, I am here right now, and we are waiting on the buses to come over here, as Andy was mentioning. Now, the church that they're coming from is down the street, so it's taking them a little while. None of the buses have showed up yet, but as Andy was mentioning, we believe that on the first bus we have people like Houston icons like Yao Ming, actor Chuck Norris. I do have the list with me of people that were notable people that were in attendance today. We've got people such as I mentioned, Chuck Norris. We've got Nolan Ryan, Craig Biggio, J.J. Watt. These are some people that we do expect to run into today. I know that our Roseanne Aragon spoke to Arnold Schwarzenegger earlier, and Brandon Walker, who was here and handed off to me, said he spoke to some other people that were in Bush's cabinet. I'm looking at other names as I'm talking to you right now. Tillman Fertitta and Mattress Mac. These are all people of notoriety that we do expect to be coming off of the buses, but as I mentioned, none of the buses have come through yet. I'm looking over my shoulder hoping to get you somebody, but nobody's here at this moment. So I will keep a watch out and join you guys back here in a little while.
All right, Haley, when the buses start to arrive, we'll come back to you so that we can hear what some of the folks had to say about the service today.
Yeah.
We're back up at the motorcade now as it moves through downtown on its way to Spring, to the Union Pacific rail yard there, where the train 4141 awaits the president.
So Jen, based on what we're seeing here, does it look like they're going to pick up on I-45, or can you tell?
Well,
I think that's about the only route they can take.
you know, to get up to the Hardy Toll Road, they could take side streets.
Sure, and they're going south on Smith Street right now.
I mean, you can work your way over to Maine. You could go up Fulton.
Right.
You know, there's several ways to get up there, but
As you mentioned, the route was not announced in advance because the Secret Service doesn't like folks to know whether they're going to be taking. And of course, Bush 43 is in this motorcade as well.
So you'll learn as we learn, and we'll just keep our bird high above, and that way we can see the rights and lefts of this presidential motorcade heading up to the Union Pacific rail car 4141. And that will also be a very interesting and beautiful part of this story as well.
So it looks like they are going to take 45, the North Freeway, because they have halted some traffic as they approach the highway.
There you go.
I'm looking at 45. Equipment and police are getting in position right now, and the last of those vehicles are able to get through as they halt traffic. So they'll take 45, the North Freeway, northbound until they get to the North Loop. Then they'll take that eastbound just to cut over to the Hardy Toll Road.
As I mentioned, we do have reporters on station at the various towns along the route. We're going to cover at least 3 of these towns, and our coverage will begin when the motorcade arrives at the Westfield train station. Eventually, they will arrive at College Station.
Yes, they will. And you see all the stops along the way where people will have an opportunity to bid farewell to the former president. Our Jonathan Martinez live in College Station, and he'll be covering that aspect of our coverage. Jonathan?
Yeah, Bill and Dominique, right now things are pretty quiet out here, but we certainly are anxiously awaiting the arrival of the 41st president. Of course, that will not be happening for several hours until now. He will be getting on board that 4141 locomotive, making his way through several of the small towns. And as you mentioned, we have crews scattered throughout all of those cities to bring that coverage to you live. But once they get here, there will be a ceremony where that locomotive stops. That's going to be on the other side of Bluebell Park, not too far away from Caulfield. There is a stage, a set of risers set up there where some 400 or 500 people, VIP guests, dignitaries, students, and many more will be there to greet the president as he gets here. We're told after that his casket will be removed from the locomotive. There will be a small procession in comparison to Barbara Bush's procession. It'll make its way down George Bush Drive, finally up Barbara Bush Drive here, and it'll finally arrive here to the roundabout where more ceremonies are planned. That will include a 21 aircraft flyover. We're being told that one of those aircrafts will also perform that missing man maneuver as well. We're told when they do arrive here, there will be some 1,600 A&M Corps cadets that will be welcoming the president, just as they did for Barbara Bush. And pretty much every branch of the military will be out here to pay honor and their respect to the former first president as he is being prepared to be laid to rest alongside the love of his life, Barbara, and his daughter, Robin, as well. So we, of course, will be out here. But that right now is, again, it's quiet, but we are anxiously awaiting for the president to get here. Bill and Dominique.
All right, Jonathan, thank you. This journey, of course, replicates one that was taken a little less than 8 months ago when Barbara Bush was taken to the Presidential Library in College Station and laid to rest next to their daughter, Robin.
The hearse is at the center of your screen as Sky 2 is capturing the move from St. Martin's Church up to the train station, the Union Pacific Railroad, and quite the journey it is. A plane ride yesterday, a train ride today, and Jen was saying that they're making their way up to I-45. They'll then cut over to 610, head east, and then take the Hardy Toll Road north. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. Their position right now is North Freeway northbound, just past Franklin, so they are barely making their way out of downtown Houston. We have captured the line of vehicles here following the hearse with our Houston TransStar camera and with Chopper. So right now they are headed in the northbound direction. It will take them about 6 minutes or so to get to the North Loop as they cut over eastbound.
So they're on northbound 45 now, heading to the Westfield train station in Spring. This is the first time that a president will be taken to his final resting place by train since President Dwight Eisenhower. And the reason this is happening is because of the president's love for trains. He wasn't a person who collected model railroad trains or anything of that sort, but his dad had been involved with Union Pacific, and he knew people along the way. And interestingly enough, back in 1994, when they broke ground on the Presidential Library in College Station, the Bushes were trying to figure out how they were going to get all the friends and dignitaries who were going to be there for the groundbreaking, how they were going to get them from Houston to College Station. So Bush 41 called in a favor from some of his dad's friends at the railroad, and right quick they sent a train down to Houston and took the Bushes and all their entourage for the groundbreaking at the museum to College Station by train. So this is actually the second time that the family will have taken a train to College Station.
And the train that we'll see today, 4141, is custom painted. They're using the colors and the elements from Air Force One during Bush's 41st presidency. This train car is normally stored in Arkansas. It's been out of regular service for the last few years. In all, the train will have about 10 to 11 cars, some of which will be carrying the Bush family as well. So as we anticipate that next part of our coverage here, we want to go back to the church, because as we last saw with Andy Sirota, many of the congregants are coming out and they're all waiting for buses to be taken back to Second Baptist Church. And Andy, I understand that you have Police Chief Art Acevedo with you.
Dominique, that's right. You know, you mentioned notable figures attending today's invitation-only funeral for former President George H.W. Bush. Among the guests, Houston Police Chief Art Acevedo, thanks for being here with us this afternoon. We've talked a lot about how the tone of today's service was a lot different than what we saw during the state funeral in Washington, D.C. How would you describe the mood and the atmosphere in there this morning during the service?
Well, I think it's no matter where you were at, it's a celebration, and it was people taking time out to actually celebrate the life of a man who everybody knew, everybody loved, but most importantly made a tremendous impact, not just on Houston and Texas, but on our nation.
He made a lifelong commitment to public service. For you, what was the most poignant moment in there today?
I think for me, watching the casket leave for the last time, knowing that our president has been such a big part of Houston, that for the last time he left this church, for the last time we saw him go by and we did the Wall of Honor, and it's just, he's really truly the last of the Mohicans, right? Just a very great man they don't make him like him anymore, so it was a sad moment and bittersweet.
The last of the greatest generation. One of the things that stuck out to me, we saw a lot of the different officers on motorcycle, and they all had the number 41. You want to tell us about that?
So last night I actually got one of my motor sergeants came up to me, actually the lieutenant came up to me and said, hey, look at what somebody made us. We'd like to put them on the bikes. And I said, absolutely. It was interesting they would ask for authorization, because to me that's a no-brainer. To honor a man that meant so much to this city and this state and nation is something that you don't hesitate to honor him.
Can you tell us a little bit about the role that HPD will be playing this afternoon in the procession?
Well, our job is to get him, help get him safely to the train, and that's what we've done for the last couple of days. And it's something that our people will take with them to their graves. But to take time to honor a man and his family that did so much for our nation is something that will be the highlight of a lot of careers here today.
He was a politician and a true gentleman.
I don't think he was a politician. If he was a politician, he probably would have gotten a second term. I think he's a man that put country first and not necessarily his own interest, and I think that's what made him special.
Houston Police Chief Art Acevedo, appreciate your insights this afternoon, sir. Thank you so much. It's starting to rain out here, but, that's what we expect, what we're expecting today. I've got another guest here that I'd like to bring in right now, Mr. Jim Mattress McInvale. I'm going to step over to this side and get you right over here. Great to see you.
Great to be here.
How you feeling?
Very uplifted after President Bush's funeral service here. Just an incredible man, a great Houstonian, great Texan, great American, and somebody we can all try to live up to.
And I asked this question of the chief, and I want to ask it to you. The tone today here, obviously very different than what it was in Washington, D.C. during the state funeral yesterday. What struck you most about today's service? What was the mood like in there?
I think the mood was very, we're all sad because the great man is gone, and it's left certainly a hole in the world in Houston, but we're also all inspired by his incredible life. Such a great human being, he and Mrs. Bush both, and he just set a standard, a role model for all of us to try to live up to what he does.
You two were friends. Share with us, if you don't mind, your fondest memory of Mr. Bush.
Well, my wife told me last night about one time there was a Rockets fundraiser. She was talking with President Bush, and I was too, and my little daughter Elizabeth came up. She was about 6 years old, and she says, Dad, can I go buy this auction item? And her mother said, Elizabeth, you're interrupting. Do you know who you're interrupting? She says, duh, yeah, Mom, can I go get the money? And then President Bush said, that's a smart kid. But millions of great memories. The biggest thing was he always treated everybody so well, whether it was the valet park guy or the waiter or the $1 million donor. He treated everybody the same. A great American, a great Houstonian.
And you two share something very important in common. You both give back to the community. He cared deeply about the Houston community and the people that he came in contact with, many of whom he called friends.
Yeah, whatever I asked Mrs. Bush or President Bush to do, they always right there. I asked them about the tsunami thing. They put together the Bush-Clinton tsunami thing. We raised $15 million for that. So he was always there, always said yes. And as far as public service, he's definitely my role model. As far as being a gracious human being, you couldn't get a better role model than him. As far as how to live a life worth living, he's the best.
People were so taken by his grace and his virtue and his decency. What will you miss most about him?
All of those things. Just you know, just him being there inspired all of us in Houston, and you know, seeing him at the Astros game or the Texans game or whatever. He was George Bush. He was the 41st president of the United States, but at the same time, he was one of us.
He loved his sports teams, didn't he?
And he loved this town. He loved the people. And, of course, as they said in there, he loved his family and his faith. So just the type of person we all should aspire to be.
Appreciate your insight this afternoon. Jim Mattress McInville, thank you so much for being here.
Andy, let me ask you, we see the Metro buses behind you there. Have they finally begun shuttling people back to Second Baptist, the Woodway campus? Looks like it's just
Bill,
now
they're
beginning.
starting to get folks sent back to Second Baptist Church. As I said, it's beginning to rain here. The rain's coming down at a pretty good clip now. But yeah, these buses, these Metro buses, are now on their way back to Second Baptist Church. And we've been told that once those buses arrive, that our crews who are there will have a better chance at getting more interviews with a lot of these guests. That is, if they're willing to talk to the media to share their thoughts about today's beautiful service.
Well, so far
you're right, Andy. We do have Haley Hernandez there at Second Baptist.
Yes,
so
and
we will be talking to her.
We've loved the interviews you've given us so far. It's just wonderful insight as to the level of appreciation that everybody has for the former president. So if you find somebody else, let us know, and we'll come back to you. Okay, Andy?
Guys, we'll be here.
All right, Andy. Andy Sirota there at St. Martin's. We're back up now with the motorcade, I believe, on the Hardy Toll Road now, Dominique?
That's right, Hardy Toll Road heading northbound. And, you know, it's ironic. There's a train track that parallels the Hardy Toll Road in just a little bit. And that's exactly where this hearse and motorcade is headed, to the Westfield train station for that final ride via rail into College Station, as Sky 2 remains perched above to show you the slow-speed drive. Roughly, they were doing 35 miles in town. They've picked it up a little bit, but still not moving along too quickly, taking their time going through Houston on a somewhat drizzly day here in town. We've had beautiful weather thus far, and it's going to be another exceptional ride into College Station, giving yet other people who do not have maybe access to come into Houston or to have been a part of the beautiful ceremony today. It gives them a chance to bid farewell to our 41st president along, and they're not stops, but they're towns that the train is going to go through. And so from what we've seen from our coverage over the past couple of days, those towns in Navasota, they're all preparing for large numbers of crowds to be there at the ready just to wave goodbye.
In Old Town Spring, where all those beautiful little shops are,
yes.
All the people we talked to there yesterday were really looking forward to this because they have a perfect view of the train and when it heads off. Robert Arnold has been waiting for the motorcade to arrive. He is at the Westfield train station in Spring. Robert?
Yes, we're starting to see a lot more activity. Members of the military, the ceremonial troops starting to get in position, get things ready as that motorcade approaches. And there it is right there. There is Bush 4141. This is the train that will carry the president from Houston to College Station. As you've been mentioning, it's about a 70-mile trip, about 2.5 hours long. I want to talk about 4141 a little bit. This was a rather unique honor for the president. Union Pacific officials tell us this is only the 6th time in the company's history that a locomotive has been painted a color different than traditional yellow and red colors. They also shared with us a story that when this was commissioned in 2005, the president was so excited when he was on board, he actually asked if he could drive for a little bit. Well, the Union Pacific people were very gracious, and they let him sit in the engineer's chair, gave him a quick crash course, and with the engineer right over his shoulder, they say that the president did take the controls for about 2 miles and just loved every second of it. As you've been mentioning, that color scheme on the locomotive is meant to resemble Air Force One. Even the back of it, if you look at the way it's designed, it also resembles the aircraft. You even have the American flag there on the back. And one of the other things that you had been talking about, Bill, this is a really rather unique moment in history as well. This will be the first time this century a president has been carried to his final resting place by train. You had said President Eisenhower in 1969, he was the last president to be carried by rail. He was taken all the way from Washington, D.C. to Abilene, Kansas, where he was laid to rest. Now, the way this is all going to happen is when the motorcade arrives, it will come through here, and then you will have the ceremonial troops. They will take up places. Members of the Bush family will be escorted to their positions. Then after that, they will remove the president's casket. At that point, you will have the presentation of arms as well as musical honors. After that is done, then the president's casket will be taken into that car right in front of us, that's the one with the American flag on it, will be placed inside. Members of the Bush family will then be escorted onto the train, and then the train will make its final journey. Now, we are hearing some sirens, so we know that that motorcade may be getting close to the area. As soon as that happens, though, we have been asked to all stop speaking as that ceremony takes place through here. But again, once the motorcade arrives, you will have the military take up positions here, and again, they will have the musical honors and the presentation of arms with the family before the president's casket is taken on board the train. Again, about a 70-mile trek between Houston and College Station. It should take about 2.5 hours, pass through about 8 towns between Houston and College Station through this area. And so just as soon as that motorcade arrives, that ceremony will begin. I know there had been a little bit of consternation that it's been raining out here, that it started raining, but we've seen all the different ceremonial troops getting their gear ready, getting everything in position to start this ceremony before the president is taken to College Station. Bill, Dominique.
Robert, the engine, the 4141 engine, had been in storage since 2012, awaiting this day.
Yes, it has. But, you know, before that, this was not just for show. This was an actual working locomotive. It had hauled goods in throughout the 22 states that the Union Pacific Rail lines serve. So before 2012, this was actually a working locomotive, Bill, and it's done a lot of work, according to Union Pacific.
And today it does its most important work of its life, taking the president to the final stop. But one other thing, Robert, I don't know if you read about this, but Bush 41, during 1992, when he was seeking re-election to a second term, did some whistle-stop tours on a train through the Southeast and the Midwest.
Yes, he did. He's always, ever since what we've heard, ever since childhood, he's always loved trains, been very fascinated with trains. And so this was something that had been talked about when these plans were being made. And it was something there was a little bit of consternation back and forth about using the train, security, things like that. But the family and, of course, President Bush, really, this was something they wanted because he's always had a great love of trains. And yes, that's why he did use the whistle stop in that. He feels it's a good way to connect with people. And plus, he gets to experience one of the things that he really enjoyed in life as well, Bill.
Robert, talk about the specific rail car that the president will be in. This is not your typical rail car in the way that it's outfitted, as well as family, because they'll be riding in the train as well.
It's a baggage car, essentially, right?
Yes, it is. And if I'll get out of the way so you can see it straight there. You do have the passenger cars here for the family members and other close friends of the family. But the car that the casket is going to be in, you notice how it's much more open. And you see there's that clear square there. It's plexiglass. That's so as it goes along the route, all the people who have lined up along the route can catch a glimpse of the president's coffin as it makes its way to College Station. So it's outfitted differently so people who are along the rail line do get a glimpse of the casket as it makes its way to College Station. That's the difference, and it's much more open.
Robert, I can't read it, but to the right of the American flag, there's yellow, and then there's writing there. Can you tell us what that says?
Yes, it says proud heritage, powerful future, building America. I believe that's the standard Union Pacific. Yes, it is.
Robert, the motorcade will reach you in about 15 minutes, and when it does, we will come back to you. Thank you so much. Robert Arnold at the Westfield train station in Spring, where the president will be loaded on board the train for his final journey to his resting place. Where are we now here, Dominique?
Well, it's Hardy Toll Road. There was just an overpass, and I'm not sure if we're close to the Beltway. I'm going to rely on Jennifer to give us some logistics there.
Yes, they are closer to about 10 minutes away from where you just saw Robert Arnold. We are looking at Hardy Toll Road and Walston, just passing up the Aldine area, right at the Hardy Toll Road North Beltway interchange.
Okay.
All right, Jennifer, thanks so much. By the way, these Metro bus shuttles from St. Martin's to the Woodway campus of Second Baptist have finally begun to arrive.
They are, and Haley Hernandez has been standing by. She said she'd get back to us when people started arriving. I'm guessing you've got somebody, Haley.
Republican senator from 61 to 85.
Okay.
His two daughters are.
Haley, can you hear us?
I don't think she realizes she's on the air yet. Haley, can you hear us?
Morning, guys. So I am talking to. Oh, she's running away now. Tell me what you thought about the service today.
I thought it was beautiful and very fitting.
Remind me your name.
I'm Penny Cook. Penny Tower cook.
Okay, and remind me of your relationship with Mr. Bush.
Well, our father, John Tower, was elected to the Senate in 1961, and so he was the first Republican elected since Reconstruction, and so he and the Bushes and our families, the Bushes, have been friends for years.
Well, I know you're good family friends, and you guys were giggling and carry on just now, so you must have taken away a lighthearted feeling of celebration.
Well, the Bushes are just an amazing family, and in a way, I mean, as sad as it is, and it's so sad to lose them, but after Barbara died this spring, it's just, I think he's thrilled to be with her again.
I think so too. It made for a lovely love story, didn't it? Would you guys like to say something about the service today?
Yes, it was beautiful, and we were just so appreciative to be a part of it, to send our love to the family and to the president.
You know, we keep hearing the same messages over and over again about what a caring and generous person he was. Is that what the message that you took away from today as well?
Well, of course, I've known Mr. Bush since the late 60s, and he's one of the finest men I ever met. He's a role model for all of society, and a great leader, and he's had an outpouring of support all over the world in the last 24 hours.
This was a great send-off. This was a wonderful send-off. And being from Dallas, I have to say, the people from Houston have been absolutely amazing. Everyone we've met, and it was from dawn this morning, very friendly, very accommodating, and very loving. Mr. Bush would have been really proud of his city today.
I think so. Thank you. And thank you for putting that on record.
I forgot. My husband was on George H.W.'s first congressional staff, 66.
Will you tell me your name, sir?
John De La Garza.
Mr. De La Garza, what was your relationship with Mr. Bush like?
I was on his legislative assistant for him and his first House staff back in 66 and 67, a long, long time ago.
And what are your favorite memories of him?
The kind guy, great sense of humor. He and Barbara were just a wonderful couple. They've been a mentor to us for many years. We've kept up with them, and we just are very fond of them. It's a remarkable love affair that George had with both his family and his wife and his country, and with his staff, for that matter.
Good to hear. And you took that message away from the ceremony as well? You think that was a good...
I've watched everything yesterday and been lucky to have been invited today. Yes, it caught the character of the man and the character of the family. We hope someday it can be duplicated. It's tough right now, but we'll get there.
Sure thing. Thank you very much. I appreciate you speaking with me. All right, Bill and Dominique, stick with me 1 minute. We're going to see if we can find somebody else.
As you're looking, what he just said really resonates, because I read an op-ed in the Chronicle yesterday talking about how the president hadn't even been buried yet, but yet people on both the left and the right are using the opportunity to continue to bash what's happening in the White House. They're saying, can we at least have 1 or 2 days here of kinder and gentler?
And Bill, just to give everybody their parameters, I just saw the airport signs on the street. So the airport exit is right there off of the Hardy Toll Road. So they'll be approaching Greens Road shortly. Just to give you an idea, a few minutes ago, they were 9 miles away. So they're probably closing in on 8 or 7.5 miles.
Haley has another guest right now, Dominique, I'm being told.
You as well?
Go ahead, Haley.
Tell me about your relationship with Mr. Bush.
It goes back a long ways. When he was running for president, before he became the vice presidential candidate, I worked in his campaign here in Houston.
And tell me, what are some of your memories like with him? What are some of the stories that you can share with us?
Well, many of the stories are kind of... But one of the most fun stories was he invited me to Kennebunkport. And as I was leaving, he walked me to the car, and he said, well, Rod, I got some really serious decisions to make. I said, really, Mr. President, what is it? He said, I got to decide on whether I'm going to go in my boat or whether I'm going to go fishing. I said, Mr. President, you've got a history of making great decisions, so I'm sure you won't be having trouble with that one.
Experience when Ronald Reagan appointed him for his vice president.
Oh, I was in the room with him when he got the telephone call from President Reagan. At that time, candidate Reagan, to join him on the ticket to be the vice presidential candidate.
That's a historical moment.
It is a historical moment. It's one I've always treasured.
What else can you tell me about that? What do you remember from that day?
Well, I remember that he had just come from the convention center where he had just made his speech. And we were all sad because the conventional thinking was it was going to be Ford. Ford was going to be the person that Reagan would take. But all of a sudden, something broke down with the discussion between Reagan and Ford, and President Reagan made a different decision, and he called President Bush.
Who was ambassador at the time.
Yeah, it was Ambassador Bush at that time, right.
Yes. And they were sitting in the suite, and it was pretty quiet, laid back, and then the phone call came through, and then everything changed. Secret Service came in and swooned in, and life was different from that point on.
Were you too?
Yes. Well, I liked reading about the story. We weren't married at the time. And
she read my notes.
I read his notes. He actually documented this in his diary, and he shared that diary with me, and we've been looking at that the last couple of days. So that was such a tremendous story.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing it with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a lovely day. I appreciate you taking time to talk to me.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Let life catch you living.
Very good. Thank you, guys.
Haley Hernandez at Second Baptist, looking for more folks to interview who have been at the service there.
You can see the enormous media presence, media from all over the world here today, many of whom stationed outside St. Martin's Church. They're also there at Second Baptist, getting everybody coming back on buses, and also a media presence up at the Westfield train station where our Robert Arnold. And you can see now the gathering of military members there.
This color guard, Dominique, has come in from Washington. These are the men and women who are trained to conduct all the ceremonies, protocols for the funerals, the inaugurations, all of these things. But there is a special group of folks here who handle all the funerals at the Tomb of the Unknown, and who handle the coffins, the caskets of our heroes who are returning. They are a special squad. They're very strong. They're chosen specifically for that because they're the only ones who hold the casket at shoulder height when they come in. I got this information from a lieutenant colonel who contacted me last night to tell me that he had been involved in the training of these folks in Washington.
It's a private ceremony for the family only, no guests. We understand that President and Mrs. Bush will be escorted by Major General Howard there. We also understand honors will be rendered, and the casket will be carried through the military cordon onto the train, and then the remains will be attended by a military vigil throughout the train movement. And we've shown you the map. We will continue to show you the map as the train makes its way to College Station, but it will be passing through the towns Huffsmith, Pinehurst, Magnolia, Todd Mission, Stoneham, Navasota, Milliken, Welborn, and then into College Station. And so there are numerous crowds expected to gather at each of these towns for people to be able to bid their final farewell. Those living in this northwest section between Spring and College Station who are fortunate enough to see this rare opportunity, this beautiful moment of a special rail car carrying our 41st president.
Robert Arnold is on the ground there at the train station. And Robert, we've seen a military presence for this former commander-in-chief all along, from the very beginning of the funeral and his return here to Houston. He was a commander-in-chief, so he rates this kind of military honor, but he's also a veteran who served with distinction and heroism in World War II.
Absolutely, and trust me, that is on the thoughts of everybody's mind. And I'm going to have to stop talking as soon as the motorcade comes in sight. We've all agreed to observe a moment of silence, and I believe the motorcade is here, so I'm going to let the pictures take over for now, Bill.
All right, Robert.
across it. Yeah, there's another one on the other end. You can go across it in the middle. Yeah.
We know that silence is being enforced on the ground there at the train station as the motorcade approaches, but we're told by Jennifer, who's been tracking its progress, that it's still a few minutes away. What we're looking at here is the military honor guard. This is a inter-service honor guard representing all the services, awaiting the president so that they can load his casket on board the baggage car that is part of this train.
Our Robert Arnold is stationed there. He is the reporter covering this for you at Westfield train station, but all reporters must honor the silence request, and we will continue to keep pictures up for you. These are live shots coming in now as we await the president's casket to be loaded onto this special rail car that bears the American flag in a very large plexiglass window so that people along the train route will be able to see the president's casket. It's specially outfitted for the president, the rail car painted the colors of Air Force One in light blue, 4141. We've heard amazing stories, Robert, saying how the president was able to get behind the control of this train and to drive this train for 2 minutes straight, and like a kid in a candy store was so happy to be able to have that experience.
Interestingly enough, presidential funerals are planned by the presidents themselves, and it begins when they are in office. They are required as president to plan their own funerals while they're in office. He served one term, so in the 4 years that he served, he planned this funeral, which of course included this aspect of it, the train. He knew that he'd be the first president in modern times to use a train as part of his funeral service, because Dwight Eisenhower, General Eisenhower, had been the previous one. But keep in mind, these trains were Air Force One at one time. This is how presidents campaigned. It's how they traveled the country. And there was a special train that took the president around the country. And in homage to that, and I suppose just because he liked trains, the president, when he was in office, planned this aspect of his funeral to be one of the centerpieces, so that en route to his presidential library or wherever he was going to be buried, because I don't think he had decided just then, he would be going through towns on a train.
Essentially the bridge of the old and the new.
Yes.
And the rail representing the old days of America. And very few funerals took place on trains. President Lincoln, train carried his body through 180 cities in 7 states. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Bobby Kennedy, and Bill, as you mentioned, President Dwight Eisenhower. And now we have President George Herbert Walker Bush awaiting his train here at the Westfield train station.
We mentioned earlier that he campaigned on a train through the Southeast and the Midwest when he was seeking his unsuccessful bid for a second term in office in 1992. And he made whistle stops in various towns. Also a nod to the past, Dominique, when all presidents campaigned on train, they'd stop in a small town, like Navasota, we're going to go through here today, stand on the back of the train, deliver their stump speech from the back of the train, the caboose, and then roll on to the next town. So he did that. In Georgia was one of the states I remember seeing him do that, and it was remarkable to see that the past come to life in the 1990s.
From what I understand from Jennifer Reyna, and you can see the large buses right there. So the motorcade is arriving and pulling into the parking lot there up in Spring as they make their way to the Westfield train station. We've talked about how this is a private ceremony, no invited guests, military involved, and then it's going to be a roughly 2-hour, 25 minutes from this train station into Texas A&M.
Of course, the trip could go a lot faster, except for one thing. Train tracks in Texas are notoriously bad. We have not restored our train tracks in many, many decades, perhaps a century. And so trains all freight trains and passenger trains. There is a train that goes from Houston to Los Angeles, travels very slowly. It takes almost 5 hours to get from here to San Antonio. So as the motorcade approaches here, Dominique, what do you say we go silent as well here?
Steve could get him.
Hold on.
So the ceremony transferring the president's casket from the motorcade to the train has now been completed. The military has withdrawn. Reporters on the ground are still in an enforced silence until the train leaves the rail yard here on its journey through several towns from Houston all the way to College Station. A ride, Dominique, I understand, is going to take about 2.5 hours.
That's what it's looking like. This is engine 4141 that you've been seeing as they pulled back the curtain and revealed the casket, the flag-draped casket. As we watched this beautiful ceremony, there were a couple of images that really stood out to me, and as a photographer present, I'm sure these images were captured, but we saw the flag-draped casket go by the Bush family in the drizzling rain, and everybody had their hands positioned on their hearts. And then as that casket made its way onto the train, there was that last serviceman standing there in salute, and it was just a beautiful, touching image of honor and grace.
You saw that the pallbearers who are trained to do just exactly what we saw, who come in from Washington in that baggage car with the president's casket. They will ride all the way to its destination so that they can then offload the casket at College Station. And when we saw that funeral hearse arrive and the funeral director opened the back door and released the casket from its moorings, that's the final time a civilian will touch the commander-in-chief. The military takes over from here.
And Bill, you were telling me as we were watching the live pictures of what was happening, and you were talking about the Marines' role. Can you elaborate on what took place?
You saw that it was a joint service casket guard. The men who are, you saw how big they were. Mm-hmm. They all are much bigger than normal servicemen that you will see in the Marine Corps or the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, because they bear a tremendous weight. And at some point in some ceremonies, as we saw earlier, they lift that casket up to shoulder height. So they train for it. They live in a special barracks where the Tomb of the Unknown is in Washington, D.C. They lift weights every day. They maintain the strength that's needed to carry out this ceremony. They've come here to carry it out here for Bush 41. They will guard the casket until it arrives and carry it then to its final resting place.
And before they lifted
and
the
you
casket,
asked me, I'm sorry, you asked me about the Marine.
Right.
The Marine Corps, from a ceremonial aspect, is known for its handling of the American flag. Every Marine is taught the reverence for the flag, all the ceremonial protocol for the flag, and how to fold the flag just a certain way. So before the casket was removed from the hearse, the Marine, who was in that casket guard, walked up to the casket, still in the hearse, and inspected the flag to make sure that in the trip from the church to here, that flag was still exactly as you see it here, the way it's supposed to be. And that has always been the Marine Corps' duty to handle and to display the flag of the United States of America.
Well, it's a wonderful story to hear and a very important lesson in how we do things, and especially since our Robert Arnold is honoring the request of silence there at the train station. It's nice to be able to get your perspective on what was taking place. And as I take a look at our clock, it says 12:57. This train is scheduled to depart at 1 o'clock, and I'm hoping we can put up the train route for you so you'll be able to see where this train will go. But it leaves Spring, heads in a northwesterly direction. Huff Smith will be the first stop, and we've got a reporter, Bill Spencer, stationed in Huff Smith. And so we have reporters along this route, and you'll be able to catch a glimpse of what each community is doing to express their thanks and gratitude toward our late president. Jennifer Reyna was telling me that firefighters are also standing by in these communities, and they will pitch the American flag along the route as well. So it should be a very touching image to see once engine 4141 departs from Westfield train station.
In addition, there are 3 cameras mounted on this train. One that's going to give us a forward view, a bird's eye view of the train, what it sees going forward. one from the back and then one from the side to catch the crowds in these 8 little communities between here and College Station. So we'll have that view as well, the onboard train cameras, in addition to the cameras that we have stationed along the route, and the aerial cameras that we have in our Sky 2 helicopter above the train route.
2 hours and 25 minutes, and I'm looking on a sheet here, and it says food service lunch. So the President George W. Bush and his family will be dining on the car there as they make their way into College Station. We have our reporter stationed there as well for the ceremony that will take place. Jonathan Martinez is there, Sophia Beausoleil, as we continue our live pictures for you from the Westfield train station there. You're looking at the casket through a special rail car outfitted in plexiglass on both sides of the train. So no matter where you are along that route, people will be able to see the late president on his way to College Station.
The locomotive is the first car, of course. It's 4141, decked out in the colors of Air Force One. And the train had been in storage since 2012, awaiting this very day. The president first laid eyes on it back in 2005. Behind that is another Union Pacific engine. The power train is behind that drives the train. The crew of the train is in the 4th car. The media is in the 5th. The pool reporters from the network and other places who are covering this state funeral. Behind it is the baggage car that we're looking at right now. That's car number 6, holds the president's casket. And then the 3 remaining cars all hold family. Bush 43 is in the car directly behind the baggage here. Family and friends that are going on this route are in those 3 final cars. Security, of course, very tight along this route. There are specific instructions that we have. Airspace restrictions, folks on the ground. The silence you see being enforced by Robert Arnold, who is there. So all this to say that this is a very secure way to fulfill the president's final wish that he depart from his adopted hometown to his final resting place at his presidential library in College Station, some 95 miles away by car, but only 70 miles by train.
It's now a minute after 1 o'clock. The train is scheduled to depart at any moment now from Old Town Spring, making its 2 hour and 25 minute, roughly, trek up to College Station, where another service awaits, and a burial which will be private for the family and also not accessible to the media. So as with Barbara Bush's funeral, if you recall viewing that, once the hearse made its way into the gates and the gates closed, that was the end, and family was granted privacy to be able to lay their loved one to rest. And it's been a difficult year for the Bush family. They lost their matriarch in April and the patriarch now in December. And, you know, this would have been the first Christmas that President George H.W. Bush would have spent without his wife, Barbara. And they have spent Christmas together, I believe, for the past 71 years, it was said. And it just didn't seem right for him to have to go through a holiday season without his beloved Barbara. And so it's been said over and over that they'll be celebrating Christmas together with Robin. And it just would have been a very difficult time for the president to go through a holiday.
As it was, Dee, this was the first summer that they had not spent together at Kennebunkport, Maine in over 70 years. And I think they missed, of course, they missed the president missed the time that he was fighting in the Pacific. But every other summer since then, they have always returned. And one of his fondest wishes as the train begins to move here, after Barbara died, he said, I want to spend this summer at Kennebunkport, probably realizing that it may be his last summer. And he did that and then returned to Houston, what, in September?
Came back to Houston in September. It was said that he wanted to come back to his Tex-Mex food and his sports teams, which he got to take in it was also said that he missed holding his beloved wife's, Barbara's, hand. And so that longing and that loneliness, I'm sure, was palpable as the children, some of whom live here in Houston, and as those who don't, were in constant contact with their father.
The 4141 train now leaving the rail yard here, and we may mention the fact earlier that you know, if you travel from Houston to College Station by car, it takes about an hour if you're in a big hurry, and an hour and a half if you're not. The train, an hour longer than that, 2 hours, 25 minutes. And that speed is enforced by the condition of the track. Union Pacific has not replaced or significantly improved train tracks in a very long time, so trains can only travel at a certain speed, probably about 35, 40 miles an hour.
And one can imagine that maybe as it goes through those towns where people are standing by, it might slow down a little bit too.
You see, they have that, what do you call the car with the dome on top, the observation deck. So they'll be able to wave at folks if they want to as they go through the towns here on their way to College Station.
It's a beautiful sight this rainy Thursday as the clouds moved in today for the final day of President George H.W. Bush's funeral.
Weather has been unbelievably good, hasn't it?
Yes.
The timing just wonderful.
Yes, they've been blessed, truly. As we know, bad weather is moving into town tomorrow, and our weather team will be talking about that during our newscast later on today. But all in all, it has been with ease and great beauty to be able to celebrate and say goodbye to our 41st president.
And in Washington, where the state funeral was held yesterday, they were expecting very bad weather to move in shortly after as well. So on balance, the weather has just been perfect. Many people have commented on the fact that the president if he'd planned the weather,
it would have planned it as such.
Planned it exactly this way.
I think we were seeing the presidential seal on the caboose, the last car of this train, and the last car carrying family. As you mentioned, Bill, the last 3 cars carrying family, and in advance of that is the casket. So a slow way out of Westfield train station in Spring, Texas, and a very special journey. We mentioned that there were 4 others by train: President Lincoln, President Roosevelt, President Kennedy, and President Eisenhower.
You know, not all president doesn't have to have a state funeral if he wishes not to. President Nixon did not have a state funeral. He was buried in private ceremony in California. And we also mentioned that they plan the funeral while they're in office. They're required to plan it at that time. There was a department that helps them with the wishes, and I'm sure that their final touches put on later. But the bulk of the funeral that we've seen for the past funeral services that we've seen for the past week were planned back in the late 80s, early 90s.
And all of this that we've seen has been essentially 15 years in the making. The execution of
the media part of it.
The media part has been 15 years in the making to be able to provide the kind of coverage that allows the access and allows all of us to feel like we're there.
I think that these state funerals are so important for our country, Dominique, because it brings us together and makes us feel that sense of being united Americans. It's a very patriotic, moving moment, one of those moments that we all share as we say farewell to a former president. And the pageantry involved in it all, I think, adds that patriotic, unifying effect. Here's one of the 3 on-camera views that we're going to get that we talked about earlier.
It's lovely. You know, and I think to echo what you were just saying, Bill, was the visual from the state funeral in Washington where we saw all of our presidents, all of our living presidents lined up and sitting in the front row of the pew to attend the funeral. And I think that message speaks volumes. It is, you know, the great unifier to be able to bid farewell to an American president, to be able to talk about what leadership means, what service means. And of course, a big part of who George H.W. Bush was a friend and family. So it's been mentioned many times before, he was a great man because of what he did, but he was a good man because of who he was.
We do have a guest with us today, and we're going to ask that he come into position here. He is going to help us with some of the commentary as we move along. His name is Jim Granato as he joins us here on set. Jim, thank you so much for coming and being a part of this. Jim is the executive director of the University of Houston's Hobby School of Public Affairs, professor in the UH Department of Political Science. He has a large biography here of academia and work in the political field. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Tell us your takeaways from what you've been seeing and also your perspective.
Starting on Friday night and talking to people, the reminiscences of all people that knew him, that I know, the heartfelt feeling about his decency as a person, coupled with his monumental achievements. I mean, even though he was a one-term president, he was quite consequential. Just the peaceful end of the Cold War was enough for all of us. I mean, not firing a shot. So just even that alone, he was one of the most consequential presidents in our lifetime.
It's been said that he lost his second term because of the economy and because of putting the nation first by raising taxes. Yes. He almost sealed his own fate, but he realized that was the best thing to do for the country.
That's exactly right. I mean, he called it a gut punch when Republicans came and said, we can make a deal here. The irony about that deal, even though he did raise taxes and violate that pledge, is that there's also a component of the deal dealing with pay-as-you-go, so that if you wanted to increase spending or cut taxes, you had to have a corresponding reduction somewhere else to make sure that the budget deficit didn't grow, which was the whole point of the Budget Act in the first place.
Mm-hmm. He also was president when the American with Disability Act was ushered in.
Yes.
And we were noting that yesterday when we realized that when we saw Bob Dole in a wheelchair stand to salute him, and the president spent his final couple of years in a wheelchair and was disabled as well.
And the Dole moment in the rotunda.
It was extraordinary.
Yes, in 1988 they were at each other's throats. I mean, and there was on a TV show, Dole confronted Bush and said, "Stop lying about my record." I mean, they were not getting along at that point, but as you can see, they did get along later. In fact, Dole was carried a lot of water for him when he was in the Senate.
And it boils down to what we've been talking about as this funeral being a unifier, that it's decency and respect in the end.
Absolutely.
That even though you have differences of opinions, you still must respect the human being.
He sets an example for us. I mean, even in his passing, he's doing one last service for us, because in the last 4 or 5 days, the sniping has been reduced. I mean, not where it has been. We just went through a bruising midterm, and after that has been all this, the conflagration we're all going through politically. But there has been a drop in our national blood pressure for at least a few days.
And what do you think this will do? Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No.
But what do you think this is going to do? Do you think this will make people sit back and reflect that, maybe we need to dial it down a notch? Is there any way to prognosticate here?
I'm not optimistic.
I agree with you. No. I think it's probably not going to happen. But boy, at least we had 4 or 5 days of relative calm.
Yes.
Of relative calm, because it didn't all go away.
No.
You may have heard me mention the op-ed in the Houston Chronicle yesterday, where they talked about, 41's not even buried yet, and yet the sniping continues. The temperature is high, right and left.
Right.
People talking about the current administration, and this opinion editor said, can't we just keep it down until at least we've buried this man?
Exactly.
But, it will continue, I'm sure, just as soon as this is over, back to the temperature it was before.
Correct, I agree.
Yeah, sadly.
We saw, and I'm not quite sure, as we are on a double box here, on the left-hand side, you see a camera perspective from engine 4141, and then the other is the aerial shot of the Sky 2 of the train moving through. And I saw it pass through.
Look at all the cars that have come.
You see everybody lined up there.
Yeah.
And there was one area where I saw a fire truck, and Jennifer Reyna mentioned that the firefighters would have the American flags pitched along the fire trucks there along the route. And it was just a beautiful sight to see. You know, this is just the heart of America right here, and the heart of Americans coming out in the middle of their day. These people could be on lunch break or taking time off of work at this point just to pay their respects to the 41st president. And it is that expression of thanks and gratitude that is the thread of civility in our society, and it's what we enjoy seeing here.
That he was huge on civility. That was his main goal, for Americans to be more civil with one another. He did not see that come to pass in his lifetime.
No, he did not.
Fortunately. As Dominique was mentioning, you know, he'll be buried deep in the heart of Texas and right in the middle of this country. And what we're watching here is history. Can you talk a little bit about, from the perspective of the history that we're making here today, this week?
Well, we're laying to rest a president and a man who, when you look at the arc of his life, his achievements are there's so many. I mean, he was easily the most qualified president we've ever had. And unfortunately, he did not get reelected. But the point is, when he was in office, the things that he did do, we mentioned the fall of the Soviet Union, the deft handling of the Gulf War. I mean, people who aren't living then can remember we were projecting casualties of the thousands, and that war was over when the ground war started. It was over in 100 hours. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you mentioned Disabilities Act. He did some things with the Clean Air Act. He started NAFTA, which I guess has a bad name now, but back then that was actually a bipartisan effort. I mean, President Clinton pushed it over the finish line. Mm-hmm. So his achievements are one thing that I think, again, he sets an example for all of us. The other thing I would point out is, we've talked about his character, and I think you're not hearing people say, even his opponents say good things about him. You know, that doesn't happen that often with politicians. So, I mean, if you would take a picture of Uncle Sam, maybe we should substitute George Bush's face on that from now on, because he does set an example for us, I think, is just, for anybody that gets into public office, you'd like to see people follow. So in terms of the history of him and his impact, it's been huge. And in terms of Houston, I mean, I don't know if you saw the article in the Chronicle by Charles Foster, who was a close friend of his. And he talked about it was just a tad of what he had done for people, but he had a Rolodex from here to San Francisco of people he knew. And that way he could pick up the phone. Just one example, the train that's being used here by Union Pacific, Drew Lewis was the CEO of Union Pacific. He was a transportation secretary during the Reagan administration, so they were close friends. And that's how this came to pass, that Union Pacific would dial this up for him.
It's fascinating. You know, you talked about some of the legislation that was passed during his time as president, and it was very much, in some cases, a moderate type agenda. There was a lot of bipartisanship work that took place during that time.
Correct. Actually, Eisenhower had similar problems with his own party, and certainly Bush did too. I mean, there are etches in his diary where he was having trouble with Newt Gingrich and some of the members of the Republican Young Turks at that time. And he was having trouble with his own party. He got along with the Speaker at the time, Tom Foley, who was a Democrat. They were best friends. They had known each other in the House. He did not get along very well with George Mitchell, who was Majority Leader in the Senate, but he did foster friendships. For him, the person was political. You could see it. It was just, he was able to just reach out to people and get cooperation. And one of his closest friends towards the end was a Democrat, Bill Clinton. Yes. They became famous friends as they raised money for the tsunami and Gulf Coast relief efforts, traveled all over the world together. I don't know, a lot of people don't realize it, but you know, George H.W. Bush liked a glass of vodka from time to time. I remember one time being at the Houstonian Hotel and talking with him, and a waiter came by. We were backstage before he did his talk, and he said, "Could you bring me a glass of vodka?" So the young man takes off. He comes back with a cocktail-sized glass with ice and vodka, and he says, "No, son, I said a glass of vodka." So he went back and came back later with a water glass full of vodka. And you know, so I'll just say that he and Bill Clinton were, you know, found some common ground in the way they like to have fun and commune with one another. Called him his brother from another mother. Exactly. Yeah. That's the other thing, that when they were doing their their relief work. They flew a plane together. There was only room enough for one bed, and Clinton gave it to Papa Bush.
Oh.
Jim Granado is joining us. He's the executive director of the University of Houston Hobby School of Public Affairs. Just hold tight with us. I've got some information about this train, specifically the engineer. Her name is June Nobles. She served 9 years in the Navy, 16 years with Union Pacific. Hometown is Loris, South Carolina. And the conductor is Randy Kuhanek, served 8 years in the Navy, 23 years with Union Pacific, from New York.
We just saw a photograph of firefighters standing on top of their truck saluting the train as it goes by. You know, you talked about an engineer having been in the Navy. Of course, Bush 41 was in the Navy, the youngest naval aviator ever, shot down at the age of 20 years old. Can you imagine? 20 years old, driving a torpedo bomber in World War II over the Pacific. Anti-aircraft gun hits his plane. He completes his bombing run in spite of the plane being on fire, and then at the last possible moment ejects over the ocean and is rescued and then given the Distinguished Flying Cross for his heroism, all at the age of 20. He comes back home, graduates from Yale, gets married, gets in a Studebaker and drives to Odessa, Texas. He and Barbara live in a one-room shotgun. It's a double shotgun house. They live on one side of it, had prostitutes on the other side.
Starting a new life in Texas.
Started you know, their oil business career here in Texas. Later moved to Houston and talk to us, Jim, about the public service that begins from a political standpoint. I mean, he was envoy to China. He was a congressman. He was head of the CIA at one time. My God, it's so diverse. It's unbelievable.
40 years plus of public service.
Oh, yes. His father was a senator, and so the first thing he really does, though, is he gets involved in Republican politics in West Texas, moves to Houston, and the Republican Party was nowhere back then. Mm-hmm. And he's the one that started organizing party apparatus. But then, of course, he runs for the Senate in 1964. He loses to Yarborough. He then runs for Congress in 66. He wins, and he's reelected in 68. He then runs for the Senate again in 70, and he loses to Lloyd Bentsen this time. And at that point, Richard Nixon encouraged him to run for the Senate in 1970, brings him on, and he becomes, I believe, chair of the Republican National Committee, which became an important thing to do because Watergate starts, and he's got to try and keep the party from being destroyed by that terrible event. And then he is envoy to China. He then becomes CIA director. When Jerry Ford is looking for a running mate, this is not generally known, he picks Nelson Rockefeller, but George Bush was a finalist in that. So he could have been a VP candidate in 1976. And Gerald Ford barely lost Texas. You wonder if he would have won Texas and won the election, because the election was very close. If Bush would have been his running mate, he would pick
might have
Texas.
made a big difference, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then there was the Ross Perot factor.
Yes, in 1992.
You know, yeah, I mean, that's left the dialogue a little bit, but it was a big part of having a third party in there.
Right. But yeah, he was VP. After he becomes CIA director, the agency was in terrible. You talk to folks that worked there at the time, they said he really was a unifier again. He was extremely competent and helped resuscitate the morale at the place.
Spent 8 years in the White House as vice president under Ronald Reagan, 4 years as president, so 12 years in the White House altogether. Then his sons. We had 2 governors, and then, you know, one of the governors becomes a president.
And let's, real quick, as we're looking at these beautiful images, just to see these crowds here by rail crossing. It's great. I mean, they're waving American flags. I've seen families holding one another, people just standing by themselves, just waving the American flag, fire trucks with the American flag. I mean, it's just a train route lined with Americans who are proud to wave their American flag.
As the train moves westbound out of Houston, but still in city limits, people, you know, who live near these tracks and probably hate it most of the time, but not today.
No, they're loving it today. What a special and rare opportunity to witness this moment in history, to have this connection, to feel this close, to be feet away from a former president before he is laid to rest in a private ceremony with his family in College Station. It is a unique and rare opportunity, and just as President Bush would have wanted it, just as he wanted it, he created this.
This picture looked a little bit alarming on the left side of your screen. That train on the left is stationary. It appears to be moving just because we're watching a moving train. People were on the tracks right in front of it, but it's no alarm. So here we are. What will they parallel 290? I guess all the way.
It looks like the track is 290 is a northwest freeway, so it will parallel. But 290 can and does probably run into other cities than the train will.
And so the train route's been publicized. People knew it, and so
they've been
made their
preparing
way
for days.
To wherever they thought they've been staking it out for days now.
We've been talking to people of the different towns, the officials there, and they were all sort of scratching their heads saying, boy, we're going to have more people here than we know what to do with.
We've never had to confront anything like this before.
That's right. And there's a lot of ranch land and farmland out there, and so people who are of the land are coming into these smaller towns to be able to witness this event. And there you can see the traffic on the freeway above. Look at that. I mean, it's just spectacular to see the cars pulled aside and people lining the tracks. That's an image from, America of the early 1900s when people would line train tracks, and it's just not a sight that you see anymore. And this really is a throwback to the days of old.
Folks want to be a part of history, and history is being made here.
I'm going to talk to our producer. Daniel, any idea of the next town that we're approaching?
Probably going to go through Hempstead and then on to Huffsmith. The problem in Huffsmith, we have a reporter there, but we haven't been able to tighten up his signal enough to get to him yet.
Well, hopefully by the time the train gets there, that will be resolved.
We've got somebody in Navasota as well, and in Magnolia. So we'll be visiting with them just as soon as we can get the signal to work. A lot of technology involved in covering a funeral today, as opposed to, but you get so much more.
Well, and frankly, we were talking about the weather. I'm giving thanks that it's not raining out there today hard, because, we have this because of our chopper shot. This is what gives you the perspective. And so we are very grateful that Sky 2 is able to capture this and is not grounded due to weather, which, will happen tomorrow.
And the side mount camera on board the train itself that's showing us the left part of the screen here. Folks standing on the tracks that go the other direction, waving at the train as it goes by.
It's a beautiful sight. And our chopper to the right. And the train, as you said, the first town will be Huffsmith. But still, there are many, many areas where we're seeing crowds gather. It doesn't have to be these Texas towns. It's just anywhere along the route and anywhere close to where these folks live. And a lot of people driving in from the cities, and they're just finding a space because they know some of these towns will be heavily populated because of this special and remarkable event.
And that's true. We did a story on one person who traveled 1,000 miles to be part of history, to see this happen. We had that nice email yesterday from a former congressman from Ohio who has moved to Texas and came here because he was invited to the funeral. He had served during the same time that 41 was in the White House and knew the president, and he and his wife got an invitation and came here to Houston to attend it.
All kinds of notables, dignitaries, famous people. We had Arnold Schwarzenegger talking. It was really spectacular to see the turnout at St. Martin's Church today, and just a beautiful service, quite uplifting, quite a celebration of his life. His grandson, the eldest grandson, George P. Bush, talked about his favorite food, barbecue, tacos, ice cream. I found out that he liked Klondike bars. But it's great, these anecdotal stories. And then there was that really sweet story of how how 41 would say the kids would get a first to sleep award, which is genius. When you have that many grandkids and you need quiet in the house, you set up some sort of a system and a game to get everybody into bed. But it was wonderful, this insight into the personal family life. And as we've been talking to Jim Granato, who's with the U of H Hobby School of Public Affairs, we've been talking about his public service, but equally as important is his private service.
Sure.
Just got an email from somebody who's watching the train go by. It said they're currently parallel to 99 near Gosling Road. So folks are watching the coverage, I guess, on their cell phones and listening to us talk and letting us know where they are along the route here. Again, technology, right? Exactly. It's crazy.
Real time.
Yeah, in real time. Look at the crowd here on the right side of your screen. I don't think the train's come through just yet.
No, but there's another fire truck.
That's our helicopter shot.
Yes. Yeah, so there are fire trucks that are stationed all along.
This has to be sort of a nightmare for the Secret Service because they like to secure routes in advance, but when you're trying to secure a 70-mile stretch of country.
Sure, when anybody could pop along a rail track. And that's what's happening. People are just finding their opportunity to get in and pay their respects. And we've seen clusters of Texans and clusters of American flags. So it's a beautiful tribute and send-off to a president who made it known that he was a president of the people, that he connected with the people. We've been talking this past week about how many people have a photograph with the 41st president. He was that accessible and that approachable. He was always out and about whenever he was here in Houston. We talked about how he ate at his favorite restaurants, attended his favorite sporting games. He was never secluded in any way, always real and approachable, let everybody take a picture with him, made everyone feel special in the process. And so it makes sense that we see this type of public outpouring of love and affection for a man who turned nobody down.
And, most people who came into contact with this president, even in a very peripheral way, say working at a restaurant, not necessarily a significant meeting, got a note from the president. Mm-hmm. I suspect that he probably had somebody on his staff who wrote most of these notes at his
that he
direction.
Probably dictated.
And then that he signed and sent. But what do you think that's about, Jim Granato, about all these notes and all these photographs? He's building a legacy in a way, is he not?
Friendship mattered to him, obviously, and he just liked people, which made him a very important public figure. I mean, you have to like people, be successful, and he just built these relationships. And what you're seeing here and today, but in the last 4 or 5 days, it can't be faked. We liked this man, mm-hmm. And it's in that example you just brought up about the notes. That's just one thing, but he was forever helping people. I have colleagues at the Bush School at Texas A&M, and they talk about when people would come into their apartment for a party, the Bushes would serve them the drinks.
Yeah.
It's just that kind of, servant leadership is just.
Having come from such a patrician background, yes, to the life of humility and service that they had, I read that in the inauguration, Barbara wore shoes that she bought for $26.
I bet they were comfortable.
And they just weren't pretentious people.
That's right.
She made a joke when they were first elected. You'll be seeing pearls.
Mm-hmm.
Fake. They were not expensive.
Sure. No, not at all.
Right, exactly.
And that's what made her so endearing, because she was touchable, relatable, and people could be like her. Yeah. People could be like her. She always said she didn't like her neck, and that's why she wore her pearls. But it became such a beautiful statement and a symbol of her class and elegance. And even more so was just witnessing this phenomenal love affair between two people. A couple married for as long as they were is a rarity these days. And then to see the level of love, admiration, and respect that they had for one another also set that bar even higher.
Dominique, we're going to visit with Brittany Jeffers, who is in one of the towns along the train route here. She's in Magnolia. Of course, the train's not there yet, but people are. Brittany, what are you seeing there?
Yeah, Bill, people have been here since before dawn this morning. I heard somebody describe this as the heart of the city. They're here near the historic depot on both sides of the tracks. If you take a look, they've got their lawn chairs, their flags, their umbrellas because it was drizzly this morning. So many of them saying that they wanted to be here to experience history, to have the opportunity to pay their respects to the 41st president. Talked with people from all over, people who've traveled here from New Caney, from Beaumont, from College Station, someone from Georgia even who said that he took his kids out of school for a few days so that they could make a road trip just to be here. Also, people who are local. I'm here with a veteran right now. Mr. Jim Carroll, is it? Sir, why did you want to be here today?
Well, President Bush was a veteran. I'm a veteran, and I just had to show my respect for him as a veteran and as our president.
And thank you for your service as well, sir. We were here early this morning. Other people were here even before us, before the sun came up. What did you think of this, to be here in your town, to see so many people here who want to give a tribute?
This is remarkable. I didn't know that there was that many people in Magnolia. There is literally thousands of people here, and I thank them, each and every one of them, for being here.
For those, I was trying to explain, you can see up and down the tracks here the flags and people sitting and just the camaraderie, kind of a unified front here. How would you describe all of the people and sort of the feeling here right now?
It's a feeling of unity, something that President Bush pushed for, being friendly, being one, being a country, and being together. Love it.
You said that very well, sir. Thank you again. I so appreciate it. Again, people are here just waiting anxiously for 4141 to arrive. We are going to be waiting as well. Montgomery Police Department was out here pushing people back and reminding them the safety measures, staying about 25 feet from the tracks as we wait. So we will be out here. We'll keep checking in with you. The train anticipated to be here shortly.
And we will rejoin you when it comes through. And just for your information, it's just about to Huffsmith. So that's about 2 towns away from you. So we'll get back with you, Brittany Jeffers.
One thing that really warms my heart is that the world gets to see yet again how spectacular Texans are. And just this, we've been talking about how this event and this moment is a unifier and how everybody has come out to celebrate this great man and to be a part of this movement in this moment. And it's something similar that happened after Hurricane Harvey. Right. And the world got to see another unifier. Right. And the way that we all come together, no matter what our thoughts and beliefs are.
Just got an email from a woman, Dominique, named Connie Wong. She put in the title bar, America loves Bush. Bush loved America. Americans are showing this today on the past week. So proud of us.
Yes, exactly.
She means,
everyone.
All Americans. Thank you, Connie Wong. That's the feeling I think that people have. One of pride, patriotism, sense of being together. That's what, this sort of spectacle brings out in us. That we're together. We're Americans. We're proud of one another. We're together.
And there they are, together. Americans, Texans, the American flag, people waiting, feeling happy to be a part of something that is sad, to lose a president, to lose a great man, to lose the matriarch and patriarch of a family that we've called our own is not easy. But yet we celebrate him today. We celebrate them this year of 2018, where we've lost both Bushes. We're grateful for them. We're grateful for their service, their commitment to our country, to our community, to each other. And that's what you're seeing today, is just an outpouring of love and appreciation.
Got another email here from a fellow who's the general manager of sales operations for some company here, who says complimentarily that you're doing an incredible job with the coverage. I think what he's really saying here is he's glad to be a part of it, to watch online or on television this very historic moment, because without this, without the window on the world that television gives you, you can't be a part of it.
And it's 15 years in the making, as we've said. The media planning and preparation for an event like this it's an astronomical amount of work, time, and effort to set up and to make sure everything is in place. And
I think that the planning and execution have been superb, don't you?
Superb. And the weather has cooperated, and everything has just gone without a hitch, on time and respectful.
So, Jim Granado, Bush 41 leaves the White House in the early 1990s. What happens after that?
He licks his wounds for a while. I mean, he was hurt, but he came back to Houston and he just poured himself into the community, did many things.
A lot of people thought he would not come back here. Thought we'd seen the end, the last of him when he left the White House, that he'd go back to the East Coast, to Maine. But he came back.
He sticks, right? He sticks with his friends.
Opened an office over on Woodway.
Yes.
And had his staff and went to work doing what?
He was involved in numerous, I mean, Charles Foster recounted some of those things. He was the ambassador for the city in some sense, because he knew, I mean, world leaders would want to come to Houston just to visit with President Bush.
He helped the city grow in significant ways.
Yes. So he was kind of like, I guess, is a one-man chamber of commerce for the city, I guess you could say, because of his name recognition. And again, the fact that he was the most powerful leader in the world, but he had been involved in the public arena, not only nationally, internationally, for decades. So he had all kinds of friends who I'm sure he wrote notes to and things of that sort. He had personal touch. There was a bond between him and, I mean, the list must be just uncountable of people that he knew and interacted with.
And the level of fundraising, too. I mean, you mentioned all the friendships that he made, and those friends would press in and rely on him for help to serve as, honorary chair or in some role, fundraiser to help with their particular charities and organizations. He became entrenched in this community in that way, both he and Barbara. And of course, he was the biggest champion and supporter of her literacy campaign and would focus on his points of light. And, they would continue their message in a private way.
Right. And another investment in the state was building the Bush School at A&M. I mean, he didn't have to do it here in the state. He could have gone, typically you go to your alma mater. He's a Yaley, so he could have done something in the in Yale, for example, and he chose to.
He wanted to be involved in high-speed rail in Texas too.
Right.
I mean, he told them, "Let me know how this progresses. I want to be a part of this. And I want to be on the first train." And then somebody said, "This isn't going to happen until 23 or something like that." Or 29, whatever that date was, and he said, "What's your point?" Okay, so they're rolling into Huffsmith now, and we have a reporter there, but unfortunately, we can't get a signal from that unit yet. So, but when I came to Houston 45 years ago, you could still see the Esperson building. We didn't have a skyline. You saw the Esperson building, the Hyatt Hotel, which was new, with its revolving restaurant on top. It wasn't the Exxon building, the SO building, or whatever it was. I mean, we really had no skyline. To say that George Bush was so instrumental in helping this town grow to the skyline we have here in business and banking and real estate and just everything, because he was so well connected and so many people here could turn to him for his connections to help build this city to what it's become. He was involved in sports and commerce, and I don't think people realize
he had his hand in every pot.
Yeah, a driving force he was here. To have a former president live in your city is a huge asset.
Look at this photo, by the way, from Jeb Jr. This is from inside the train. Barbara and Jenna waving to the crowd. Yeah. His granddaughters right there.
They're in in the observation deck car there.
I mean, your point about the president, the thing when you say that about his engagement, I mean, he didn't cordon himself off, right? He was in our face every day, basically, and it was a great thing for all of us.
I was trying to read. I have my glasses on, so I think I did better than normal, but I think it said we're almost, or trying to get there, Gampy. So they're talking about, and they all called him Gampy, which was such an endearing name for him, but they're talking about how close he is now to his beloved bar and Robin and final resting place.
You know, this nickname thing in the Bush clan was really quite something, and his
almost
best
organic
friend
is what
here,
it says.
His best friend, Jim Baker, Secretary Baker, called him jefe, the Spanish word for chief or boss. You know, they just had this penchant for familiarity that's really kind of endearing, because it's part of what we all do.
Look at this.
And there goes the jefe through Huffsmith.
And the crowd waving and cheering. It's a beautiful sight. And, you know, and as you look at the image on the left-hand side, look, I mean, there are no roads there. It looks like just forest, but yet sprinkled about are people. How did they get there? Where's the nearest road? How long did it take to find that place? Some of them are just there independently, like little pepper sprinkles. I mean, it's really something to see.
This is a 2-hour, 25-minute journey from Houston to College Station, 8 different towns along the route here. And as we've been showing you from the onboard camera, each time it goes through an area that has these small towns, all the population standing out there waving at the train. Look, we just passed, yeah.
It's just amazing. So
standing
people
very
are parking
close to the, to the train tracks there.
It's unbelievable. Remember the old pennies on the track that children used to do?
I'm sure somebody's done it in every one of these towns. That put
a couple of pennies on the track,
50-cent piece or a quarter.
Flatten it out.
It goes over it.
Yep.
You've got quite a little souvenir.
That's right. And good luck.
I'm sure a lot of people have done that. I was thinking about that yesterday, Dee. That
people will be doing pennies on the track.
Yep.
Now that we still have pennies.
No, they're probably using something bigger now.
Amazing, just amazing. So we've gone through Huffsmith. I think Pinehurst is next up on the list. I'm waiting to get confirmation as to where it is, but it's just a beautiful ride, and it's going to be a similar image that you'll see up and down this route from Spring up to College Station. Some larger towns with greater numbers of people, larger American flags, fire trucks, and then just a few people here and there randomly along the track at some little place, probably next to a farm road. There, look, with a tent. I mean, that to me just speaks volumes.
They camped out to see the few seconds of this train passing by. As we mentioned earlier, this is actually the second trip that the Bush clan has made by train from Houston to College Station. The first time was, I think it was in 1994 when they were going to break ground on the Bush Library in College Station. The Bushes had a bunch of people fly into town. Family, friends, dignitaries from Washington who all wanted to attend it, and they were trying to puzzle out how they were going to get. Do we rent a bus? How are we going to get everybody from Houston to College Station? So, you know, as you were saying, Jim, they called Union Pacific and said, could we have a train to get people from here to there? And they came through. So everybody jumped on a train. And rode from Houston to College Station and back for the groundbreaking of the Bush Presidential Library. So this is actually the second trip by train.
Almost in Pinehurst, I'm understanding. So that must be the shot of Pinehurst, where you can see more people lining the rail track, and more cars.
And
so
that would
the
put them maybe 10 minutes from Magnolia, where
we have a reporter
Brittany
there.
Jeffers is. So we'll be going back to her to actually witness what it's like when the train goes through a town there. See all the folks lining the
Yeah,
road
I'm
there
excited to
in
see that, to feel that, because I'm sure that energy and emotion is palpable when that train passes through. But nearing Pinehurst, so you're looking on the left-hand side, a camera on the train, so you get the vantage point of the train passing people by.
Soon we'll see those people through that from that camera.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I've loved seeing just the little sprinkling of people just in these little small towns in between the bigger small towns as this train makes its way to College Station. It's really quite spectacular.
During your time at the University of Houston, University of Texas, did you ever see 41 come to the schools, either one, to talk to?
I never met him. I did see him speak in 1980.
Uh-huh.
And where was that?
In Carbondale, Illinois. I went to Southern Illinois, and this is when the Illinois primary was going on. And he uttered the phrase "voodoo economics."
Oh, that's right.
He was taking on Ronald Reagan at the time. And that was the first time I saw him in person. But there's several friends that I have that know him, as you'd expect, and it's just, I mean, the emails and the phone calls I've been getting from people about him have just been spectacular.
What's some of the dialogue that takes place in the school? If you're just joining us, you're listening to Jim Granato, who's the executive director of U of H's Hobby School of Public Affairs. Just curious, what are some of the lessons that are taught at the school?
The school emphasizes data analysis and ethics, so that you're trained to work with data, but you also don't separate values. I mean, kind of like President Bush, right? Values were never separated from his achievements. So we put a very strong premium on values in terms of the debate between equality and liberty, for example, or how you collect data, how there are ethical practices you must follow. So our students come out of there with, those are two prongs, you're strong in data and ethics.
Here's the train coming through Pinehurst now, and you see the side camera and the aerial from our helicopter.
Beautiful. The chopper is now honing in on the car carrying 41's casket. Plexiglass on both sides, so no matter where people are standing along the track, they'll be able to get the vantage point.
See the casket as it comes through.
That's
the town,
right.
Yeah.
And it being guarded by a service member. The family in the 3 cars behind. And we saw that beautiful tweet of the Bush granddaughters, Jenna and Barbara, waving to the crowd inside.
When they all arrived back in Houston yesterday, they did a flyover in College Station, and we got a tweet photograph over the left wing of the Bush School and the Bush Library that somebody snapped from Air Force One. So now they go back on a train. This is Pinehurst, and the next stop
one will be Magnolia.
I shouldn't say stop. Next pass-through is Magnolia.
Right. Brittany Jeffers is there, so we'll be able to get some reaction for you from the ground.
You know, this ride that we're witnessing had to have gone through the president's mind many times, projecting himself along this route. He had faced his own mortality for the last 3 or 4 years. He had some very, very close calls where he spent time in the medical center here at Methodist. This time when he got sick, we got the word before he died that he would not be going back to the hospital, which told us
the end was near.
Yes.
And they would not try to prolong life anymore. But from the way it's been described by Jim Baker, one of his closest friends and former Secretary of State, that it was a beautiful passing. It was an easy passing.
So in keeping with his personality.
It was so in line, so just with ease and relationship, just surrounded by family and friends. And, you know, I think we all broke down when watching the state funeral. And learning about Jim Baker rubbing the feet of the former president. What a gift and what an honor to do that to somebody. And I just was so touched, as everybody else, in hearing these stories, hearing about the former President George W. Bush, that final phone call to his father, telling him what a great dad, and that final "I love you too" from 41.
His final words.
His final words.
Had the word love in it.
It was beautiful all around. You know, I feel that we are all so fortunate to have witnessed a beautiful life lived and the passing of that life in the same beauty. And here, as we look at a train that is reminiscent of America's yesteryear, we see it carrying our 41st president to his final resting place, and where the family can truly say goodbye in privacy. The cameras will not be there anymore. The media will not be there. It's their moment. It's their moment to let go. but what an honor for all of us to be a part of this moment and the way it was so carefully and beautifully orchestrated.
So now we have 4 living presidents, correct? We had 5 with the passing of 41, at least 4. All of them have already planned their funerals, and Donald Trump is planning his right now while he's in office, since they have to do it then. So when they got together for this state funeral, thoughts of their own mortality and their own plans had to have gone through their minds as well. As we mentioned, that 41 must have thought about this train ride, and I'm sure it's every bit as magnificent as he had envisioned it in his mind's eye.
And we'll probably be seeing more images from inside that train, and the grandchildren who are very present on social media and have also been looping us all in the experience in the moment through their tweets and posts and Instagram images and all of that. And, you know, that's the power of social media connecting. And so to be able to see an image like that of the 2 girls
Look, that
seeing
seems
their
to
backs.
be some sort of formation there. There's firefighters, perhaps?
Air Force?
I see, yeah. They may have a military reserve unit standing there.
Yeah. Let's go to Brittany Jeffers in Magnolia. The train will be getting closer to her. Brittany, what are you seeing there?
Well, right now we're seeing a lot of emotions from the crowd out here, people clutching their phones, grabbing the flags, very excited out here, a lot of nostalgia. Also, so many people anxious, they say, to witness history. We want you to take a look just how many people are out here. Many of them have been here since before dawn, here in their lawn chairs with their flags, all awaiting the 4141 to arrive. And from my vantage point right now, I can see the light on the front of the train. I want you to look around at the crowd out here right now. Many people waving their flags as they wait for this moment. We spoke with a lot of people from all over. They traveled from Beaumont, from New Caney, from College Station, some people from Georgia, some from Tennessee, all said that they wanted to be here for this very rare and historic moment, that they wanted to share this with their family. They've been out here, some of them for hours, in the small town of Magnolia, anxiously awaiting their chance to see 4141 pass through and the opportunity to pay their respects to the president. Now, you also get a sense of the security and safety out here as well. We have seen constables as well as the Magnolia Police Department out here checking in with people, wanting them to be able to pay their respects, but to be able to do so in a very safe way, reminding people to stay 25 feet away from the tracks out here. The crowd, I would say, the crowd out here has continued to grow. I would say within the past 30 minutes or so, we've seen even more people arrive out here. Many of them, as I mentioned, from surrounding cities, waiting for their opportunity to see the 4141 pass through as part of its 75-mile journey on the way to College Station. We can now see the train, the 4141, arriving here in Magnolia. We're going to take a moment.
It is until somebody gets hurt. Yeah. Don't touch me.
We can hear people out here murmuring, here she comes, here comes the train. Many people getting their phones out to snap a photo, other people with their hand over their hearts, others clutching the flag. it is. A truly historic and rare moment. We've got so many people out here someone just said that this was amazing.
History in the making.
History in the making, you say?
Yes.
Ma'am, what is your name?
Judy Brennan.
Judy Brennan. And where did you come in from?
Spring.
From Spring.
Yeah.
Ma'am, please explain what this was like.
I really don't know what words to say. It's just heartfelt. He's a great man.
You have tears in your eyes.
I know.
It was truly special.
Right, yeah. My husband met him and he said it was like he knew him forever. He just was so pleasant and acted like he knew my husband forever when he shook his hand.
Truly rare and special moment to be here with a large crowd of people. What was that like to be shoulder to shoulder with your community out here?
It seemed like there was a lot of camaraderie going on, which, you know, we haven't seen much of lately in this country, so I'm glad to see it. Everybody's out. Every different walks of life are here to say goodbye to him. He was a great man.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Thank you.
Very true. Yes, and you saw it for yourself. So many people clutching the flag out here today, taking a moment to stay here to pay their respects to the 41st president. We saw toddlers here. We saw veterans here. So many people still taking some time to gather their emotions. Many people around me looking at their phones as well as some of the pictures and the moments that they collected out here. Truly a special and, as I mentioned, rare moment to get to be out here to witness this here in Magnolia today. Bill and Dominique.
You witnessed history for sure, and he today is the great unifier. And, you know, we're all sort of coming through our social media, and people are reaching out to us, and everybody is sharing their connection to the former president. And I just got a Facebook message from Phyllis Santello Christensen. And she said, can you mention that one of their favorite Tex-Mex restaurants was El Tiempo Cantinas? They went there a lot during their good years here. And also, they love musicals. They both attended Jersey Boys at the Hobby Center. It was the last show that they saw, and Phyllis says she was sitting right below them. They just love music.
They like Molina's restaurant as well. There were a number of places that people saw them around town.
Yeah.
I'd mentioned earlier that part of the reason that trains go slowly in Texas is because of the condition of the tracks, and that comment was informed by the fact that I've taken trains here in Texas. I've ridden the train from Houston to Los Angeles, from Houston to Chicago, and at that time, admittedly, this is some years ago, the trains went very, very slowly because of the condition of the tracks. Union Pacific begs to disagree. They are not happy about that comment. They say they have now spent $450 million in Texas on railroad improvements. They don't specifically mention the track, but I imagine it includes the track. They asked for a clarification, and there it is. Apologies to Union Pacific. Glad they made improvements on the track.
And it's been a beautiful route so far. We just saw Brittany Jeffers in Magnolia, so Todd Mission is next. And the footage also confirmed that as the train makes its way through through these towns, it's slowing down to give the people who have collected a chance to see instead of it just whisking on through, which is so very nice. So everybody is taking their photos, they're posting it. I can imagine this is going to be a big social media opportunity for so many people who are there. Everybody's excited to share that they are witnessing history and are able to feel like they can reach out and practically touch the president as he goes by on train and wave their American flag. There must be a run on small American flags today at a lot of little family stores through these towns. But such a patriotic sight. What an image to be able to capture. A train carrying a president with Americans standing by with their flags and honoring and saluting him. It's really beautiful.
The next town,
Todd Mission.
I don't think we have anybody there, but we will see the train pass through, and because of the camera we're looking at right now, we'll see the crowds as well.
Right. It's in Grimes County, small town. They said the 2010 census had population of 107.
So 5 towns left before they get to College Station. The Stoneham.
Right.
Never heard of the name of that town. Then Navasota, Milliken, and Welborn, before finally arriving in College Station.
Right.
I wish we had marked with the time that they left the rail yard.
It was around 1:04, 1:05.
You're right.
It was
That's
just
exactly
a few
when it
minutes
was.
after
so
1.
They've been on about an hour now.
Right.
So about an hour and 25 minutes remaining.
Yes, because they were estimating a 2-hour, 25-minute ride, which factors in the slowing down through these different towns that they're going through. So 2:25, and that, let's see if they left around 1, 2. So around 3:30-ish is when they're going to arrive in College Station. So a little bit more, about an hour and a half left. But we've got a small train, Union Pacific. The casket is in the center of the train. Media is in front. Family, the 3 last cars contain the family. And it's been so nice to see the pictures that have come from the family as they spend their last couple of hours with their father, their Gampy, as the grandchildren called him. You can only imagine the stories that are being shared inside those last 3 cars. You can only imagine how exhausted the Bush family must be. Their grandfather passed away Friday night, and it has been a whirlwind for this family. They just flew in from Washington, D.C. yesterday. We covered that aspect for you when they arrived at Ellington Field, and then bringing the casket over to St. Martin's Church. And then early this morning, everyone was up for the funeral. About 1,000 people in attendance on the guest list. You saw many people, many notable figures from Houston, but also outside of Houston, former politicians, Hollywood folks. Everybody here in attendance. And now this last leg of the journey to burial, this last leg that was designed by the former president, all inclusive of everybody along this route to be able to be a part of it, because you know, they couldn't attend the state funeral in Washington, and it was a limited viewing here for the funeral in Houston by invitation only. So this is really the all-inclusive part where everybody gets to reach out and say goodbye. And it's a beautiful journey to be able to show.
It truly is. The Texas countryside, lovely on this overcast day. The rain is held back for the most part. Tomorrow, different story. You try to go through this area tomorrow around between noon and 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the morning as that front moves through.
Oof.
Yeah.
Very fortunate, very blessed.
Frank even said we might, you know, see tornadic activity along this this frontal line.
So today we will gladly accept the occasional sprinkle on the windshield.
You see how the train appears to be moving in the opposite direction because the choppers move to the other side.
Sure. Yeah, it's quite the illusion.
Yeah.
But what you see on the left is the camera from engine 4141. On the right is Sky 2's vantage point. And it looks like, I can't quite tell, was that Todd Mission that they went through, or are they nearing it? I'm going to get confirmation. Yeah, Todd Mission is a very small town, so it looks like that was Todd Mission. And if that's the case, Stoneham is next up on the list. But everybody's taking in now the Texas landscape.
Just before we go, ahead of the train here, I got another email about the Union Pacific rail conditions. I live on this line and can attest to the fact that they are in the middle of major improvements to this line. So there are improvements being made to the rail lines, making it possible for trains to go faster. And, you know, one day we may have real high-speed rail.
Sure. It's been a huge talk, and it's been the source of contentious debate of setting up rail to bridge the gap between the cities.
Mainly from people who live in the kind of bucolic setting that you see right here, because they don't want an electric train racing through their countryside there.
And we've heard numerous stories about eminent domain and all that entails, and so it's a very tangled web. But you know, whether you're for it or against it, it's certainly been hotly debated here in the state of Texas, being able to connect our large cities by rail, and time will tell.
So we see some fire apparatus here through this area that they're moving through. We're going to go up the line here to Navasota, where Mario Diaz, who had been in College Station for the past couple of days, reporting on preparations there for the arrival. He's joining us in Navasota. Mario.
Bill, Dominique, we are here in Navasota. The rain has come down here in the last 30 minutes, a bit stronger than it was much earlier this morning, but that is not dampening the spirits of the crowd here. Let me just step away and just show you how many people have gathered here in Navasota. We are in the heart of downtown here off of Washington, and you can see that there are thousands that have come out in support of President Bush as he heads up to his final resting home in College Station. You have a sign at one of the buildings here, just to the camera there right across the way there to my left. It says, President George H.W. Bush, thank you for a lifetime of service. As we pan over to some of the other buildings over here, we also have people that are up in the windows, young children that are holding up American flags, and you also have a flag of the state of Texas high overhead. I'm going to step over here and I'm going to speak with a couple of people who have been here since about 10 o'clock this morning. This is Darlene out of West Columbia. This is Karen, who's from Britain. I'm going to start with you. You drove all the way up here this morning.
Yes.
Why?
To honor President Bush. We felt that it was necessary. He was such a wonderful man. He's leaving such a legacy, and he's from the old school of respect and faith first and family.
There were so many different stops along the way. Why did you pick Navasota?
Because of the small town character and charm. We're from West Columbia, which is also a small town with a lot of charm.
Yeah. And Karen, you're from England, but you've lived here in the United States for quite some time. How do you take in this piece of American history that's playing out here in the last few days?
Oh, it's just awesome. I just can't believe it. It's just so wonderful being here with everybody and the Texas people. Yeah, they're really, it's just awesome. I can't think no more about it.
The pageantry that we've seen here, you come from England, where we have seen pageantry in a different realm with royal weddings. How does it strike you now, as someone who lives in America, to see this is how we say goodbye to a former president?
I just can't say anything. I just can't. It's just amazing, really.
What is the takeaway you both are trying to achieve here today when you see the train roll through? What's going to be going through your minds?
We want the family to feel the love that we have.
Yeah.
For the respect that we have for President Bush and the love and the service that he's given our country and the example that he set is just wonderful for the youth and for all of us to follow.
Yeah, it's impressive, the turnout, isn't it, as we look across the way here along the rail line of this rail in Navasota. It's just truly impressive. And you think about this, Bill and Dominique, when they were planning this day, and this week, many years ago with President Bush, he asked at one point, is anyone going to show up? Take a look at this, what we've seen right here today, what we've seen throughout the entire week, whether it's in Houston or in Washington, D.C. or in College Station later on this afternoon. There's no doubt they have shown up. And I am certain this humble man would be very proud of how Texans are saying farewell. In Navasota, Mario Diaz, KPRC. Channel 2 News.
Thank you, Mario. I just got your email where you talked about somebody asking you that, and they sure have shown. We wondered that ourselves, as a matter of fact, what kind of turnout there would be.
I think the question is, has anyone not shown up?
That's true. When you think about this, it really is an honor for us as journalists to be able to cover this. This is a lifetime moment that I know I'm going to cherish, and I know that many of my colleagues are cherishing, and we were talking about this in the newsroom earlier this morning. This has only happened once in the last, 50 years almost. This is something that is a throwback to his day, because President Bush, keep this in mind, I was talking to people up at the museum about this, he's from the Northeast, where these rail lines are part of everyday life to this very day.
That's right.
You have millions of people that rely on the rails going in and out of the Northeast corridor. So this is why he had a passion for trains, because it reminded him of his childhood, according to people I spoke to in the library. And today, a piece of his childhood is what he's riding to his final home.
It's perfection from start to end, Mario. And you mentioned being a part of this coverage and the historical nature of it and how truly honored we all feel. And I think the audience also feels honored to be able to witness it through their TV sets if they're not here. And I just want to share a message that I got from Debbie Anderson. She says, I'm watching the live feed of KPRC from Montana. Such great coverage of a historical event. Thank you.
More affirmation from a Linda Briggs, who has emailed me, this sense of feeling united, one, patriotic. We need more Bushes in the world. Love this family. God bless America. That patriotic note there at the end, and that's what these spectacles bring us. This sense of togetherness, that we're all one. We're all Americans. We all share in the loss of one of our presidents.
We just saw Mario, raindrops in Navasota. The train is making its way toward him. It will go through Stoneham first. And I'm sure for Mario, just like we saw with Brittany Jeffers as the train passed through Magnolia, I could hear her voice breaking, and I could tell that for a moment you lose your reporter's cap, and you're just like everybody else out there, and you're feeling the impact of the story. And the nature of this moment is so huge that it's hard to not allow that to penetrate and to allow that human side to come through.
We saw NBC's Tom Brokaw break down yesterday.
That's right.
Talking about this. We got an email from June Sofka, Dominique, who owned Otto's Barbecue, said, thank you for mentioning Otto's. Yes,
that's right.
We were one of the president's favorite restaurants in Houston. As owners and employees, we were always happy to see him and the kindness he showed to us all. Privileged to have known and served him.
That's right. Otto's was right there on Memorial, just east of Westcott. It's there no more. I think the structure was torn down. There's something else there. It might be a Verizon store. But you're right, it was.
There's a Verizon store everywhere.
It's the nature of it. But it was an institution, and they were known for their hamburgers, and the Bushes loved them. So, yeah.
This from doesn't sign it. It talks about their eldest son deciding to enlist in the Navy during his senior year at Spring High School in 1990. His first commander-in-chief was President Bush. He retires in 2.5 years from now. They live in Magnolia, just saw the train go by. Couldn't be prouder of this community. The military group you saw in Magnolia was the JROTC from both Magnolia High School and Magnolia West High School. Remember, we saw them in formation there when they were going through. Thank you so much for letting us know about that.
Just outside of Stonehenge. Daniel, what was that again? Plantersville. Okay. By the way, if you hear us mention the name Daniel, he's our producer, so we're asking him some questions as we present this coverage for you.
Also, we talked about there being 4 living former presidents, and that's what we meant. People are saying there are 5 presidents, not 4. We're talking about former presidents who still live. And let's see here. A lot of people emailing. They're watching this coverage and enjoying it.
And we appreciate any comment that you have. A lot of people are sharing their connection to Bush 41, as well as his connection to our community. And we love hearing those stories and passing them along. He was deeply entrenched in our community and the people who live here. And like I said, everybody's got a Bush story. Everybody has either seen him or had an encounter with him. And all of them are full of grace and friendship and warmth And so many people say, oh, he was right in front of me and I was afraid to say anything. And when they did, they felt like they were welcomed by an old friend.
Somebody, I don't remember whether it was a comment in the paper that was used or something, but said they were at one of the marathons and wanted to approach the president, kind of afraid to. And the president saw that and called him over and said, Bob, come on over here. Nice to meet you. And he says, I was stunned to hear that he knew my name. He was wearing a name tag.
Right. Just in case nobody knew.
So, yeah, there was that huge connection that he had with this town. It'll never be forgotten. We were wondering out loud what happens to the Bush family home in Tanglewood.
Sure, we were talking about that yesterday. And
now that, that there's no inhabitants.
But considering how large and expansive that family is, it could sort of be Grand Central Station, no pun intended here, as we look at the train, for the family, and a landing pad for Jeb or W, and whenever they come into town, there's still the family home where they can stay.
And we also talked about the fact that once they get to College Station, we don't know exactly where the Bush family's going to go, but they won't be that far to strike out to the ranch in Crawford. You still own that ranch? Come to think of it now, I don't even know if he still owns it. I think he does.
I think so, and I think he still does a lot of his painting from that ranch, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so some of them may head up to Crawford from there.
Got a message here from Ben Vogler, and he says, I met President Bush during a fundraiser for Congressman McCall's first run for office. He was under the weather, but did not want to disappoint the guests or McCall in not showing up. Like many have said, he made you feel as if he knew you forever. It was just a wonderful moment.
Stephen Manuel writes, I am a former engineer of Union Pacific and have had the grace of operating 4141 in revenue service on the Navasota subdivision, which is the route the train is on right now. Ran that route for 9 years. So a lot of people finding resonance in this final journey of the president to his final resting place.
Claire Moriarty asks an interesting question. She says, what happens to 4141 after the funeral? To me, it should become a permanent part of his history and stay in College Station. Thank you for all that you do, and the KPRC staff for making this a beautiful experience. Thank you, Claire.
Elena Ledette says, thank you for streaming Bush's funeral. By the way, this is streaming live on click2houston.com, too. In case you have to leave your set, you can pick it up on your mobile device. We're streaming it live on Click2Houston. Thank you for streaming Bush's funeral. Dominique and Bill are doing an excellent job. Bill more than Dominique. I love their commentary. We can't be along the route, but we feel like we're witnessing this tribute to a great man. Thank you. So I'm glad we're able to bring this to you. And you feel the same thing you'd feel as if you were, or just about the same thing as if you were standing on the route.
Right, and I just to share also, we're watching this with you. As we've been planning and preparing for our coverage of this monumental event, this is that leg where we've brushed up on some history and we know a little bit about this 4141 rail car, but the experience itself of watching this train go through towns, seeing the people respond, is as raw and organic of an experience for us as it is for you.
Listen to this one from Pastor Jeff Jones in Forest Hill, California, watching this online. I'm a pastor in Northern California, and I am in awe of all Houstonians and their love for this great president. Cannot peel myself away from your broadcast. Please accept the condolences from those in California today. Our hearts are with you, Pastor Jeff Jones.
That's a beautiful note.
Rick Barrett, enjoying your live coverage of the Bush train procession. Brings back memories of watching the Robert F. Kennedy funeral train back in 1968 and how amazing that experience was as well. These things sure bring Americans together.
In that vein, Sarah Moore just wrote in. She says, I appreciate being able to have a window to view this history. I hope we all learn from the example that George H.W. Bush exemplified. May we all be kinder and gentler and love everyone.
Beautiful sentiment. Beautiful sentiment. That's what he would have wanted.
And I think that's what he's seeing today. So the train is approaching Stoneham. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Stoneham or Stoneham? I'm sure somebody will let me know.
As the train passed through Todd Mission, somebody there said, "This is the home of the Renaissance Festival and King George."
That's right. If you hear little gaps in our coverage, it's because we are looking for your comments and trying to include those in our coverage. I know Bill and I both feel it's a great way to tell the story as the train makes its route to College Station. This is the people's experience, and so hearing your comments seems fitting.
James Weaver writes, one of the highlights of my career at Continental Airlines, which is now United, was having President George H.W. Bush and First Lady Barbara on several flights. He handed out probably tens of thousands of these tie bars. He sends a picture of it, but it's a special memory I'll never forget. He sends a picture of the tie bar that 41 gave him on one of the flights. They just made friends wherever they went. Jim, you're right. Big thing to them, making friends.
It was.
Mm-hmm. Here's a note from Kurt Letzering. Says, a proud day to be an American, no matter your political views. Watching train along the sides are black, white, Hispanic, police officers, firefighters, construction workers, and then in bold he says, American strong.
Again, more about this was the high school JRROTC standing in formation, honoring the president as he went by along the route here.
And Daniel, our producer, is saying that if you'd like, you can comment on our KPRC Facebook page, and we will take those comments and have them as a part of our broadcast.
Shannon Perry says, she's a native Houstonian of 50 years, had to be out of the country today, but watching it online, the train went right by my home and it broke my heart. She says, I couldn't be there to pay my respects to a man I met and dearly respected. Thank you for helping me feel like I'm right there with this coverage.
Perfect. That's how it's designed to be. So we are looking now at people gathering. I'm assuming this is Stoneham. And the train should be approaching there. And this is the sight that we're seeing in town after town after town, a collective gathering of people with umbrellas and some raincoats. And then as the train nears, the American flag pops up and catches the wind and starts to flutter about, and everybody puts their hands on their hearts or they wave as the 41st president goes by. And there's that sense of anticipation. And then just a few seconds later, that sense of, I just witnessed history and I'm so glad I'm here.
Richard Long writes, the lesson I have learned from this coverage is that I thought I was nice and kind. I have now learned that I can do a better job of being both nicer and kinder.
There you go, the example.
So thank you for the notes you're sending in as you watch our coverage. We're very happy that it makes you feel closer to what's happening.
Here's a note from Garland Pollard. Thank you for the coverage. Watching from Episcopal House in Southwest Florida near Tampa. Beautiful service. Nice to see the Texas scenery, a beautiful state. Amen, Garland. We agree.
So we are now, I think, 1 hour away from their arrival in College Station. If it holds to schedule, it's 2:25, should arrive there in about an hour. As we pointed out, the funeral service there is private. We will not be able to overfly it with our helicopter. We will not be able to show it to you. So essentially, excuse me, when the train arrives and the casket is offloaded by the military guard, it will be taken into the cemetery, and Bush 41 will be interred next to his wife Barbara and their daughter Robin.
And Bill and I are both monitoring our KPRC Facebook accounts, so if you would like to reach out to us there, KPRC Dominique Saxa, KPRC Bill Baeza. Here's a note from Merle Taylor. I was a Houston police motorcycle officer and was honored to escort President Bush 41 many times. And ironically, my dad, who was with the Air National Guard, used to strap George W. Bush 43 into his fighter jet at Ellington Force Base. What a great man we honor today.
Both were aviators, military aviators. Bush 43 followed his dad into service that way. He was a reservist and spent his reserve time here at Ellington Air Force Base when it was there, as the officer just pointed out.
Kathy Templeton reaches out and says, my 85-year-old Texas-born mother and I are watching your coverage from Huntington Beach, California. Thank you so much for your complete and respectful coverage. Former League City resident and Harvey survivor. Thank you, Kathy.
Okay, now we understand that they're into Navasota right here. But no, I thought we passed Navasota.
I think, well, we were headed to Navasota. Is this Stoneham?
Okay, I'm sorry. We were in Magnolia before.
Right, so we're approaching
Navasota. Coming up
Navasota.
to Mario. Shall we, is he available? Can we get to him live?
Okay.
Let's bring his audio up, and then maybe he'll walk.
Here, they want me live. Get ready.
Okay, we got you, Mario.
We got you.
Hey guys, how you doing? This is the scene here right now up in Navasota. As you can see, this is an elevated position now that we wanted to provide to everyone who is watching, and you can see the crowd that has gathered all along the main stretch of this rail line that cuts right through the heart of town. And this is truly a piece of old Texas history here, as you can see across the way with the architecture that we have, and people who are looking out through various windows. You see the red, white, and blue bunting, as well as the Texas flag and the flag of the United States of America. Many people here are excited with this form of celebration for the former president. They know that it will be one of the last times that obviously one of the last stops along this rail line heading into College Station, but it is a moment that they have shown up early for. When we got here about 11 o'clock this morning, there was already a great crowd in place. The crowd has grown bigger over the course of time. Little kids holding American flags, as well as adults. I'm going to try to speak to this one right here. Hey guys, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. We're on Channel 2 in Houston. We're live. There's the camera right there. You're holding an American flag.
Yes, I am.
How special is today for you?
It is very special for me because my mother works for President Bush the 43rd. So this is a very important day for me.
Mom, are you excited to be out here?
Very, very excited to pay our respects however we can.
Yeah, I see the White House pin that you have there, the heart pin. When this train rolls through, what is the lesson you want for your children to walk away with on this day?
That we live in the best country in the world. We're free to do this. We love America, and we're so thankful to play a small part in comforting the family of President Bush.
You'll never forget this day. You'll never forget this day. You'll tell your grandchildren about this, all right? So have a great time, all right? And enjoy this, all right?
Thank you. You too.
You're welcome. It is a huge moment here for so many individuals. As you saw that woman right there, she worked for 43 in the past. Children, again, of all ages coming out to say goodbye to the 41st president. And that little guy right there, again, when he's 80 years old or 94 years old, he'll be telling his grandchildren about the day that he spent here in Navasota, Bill and Dominique.
Before we let you go, Mario, you spent the last couple of days reporting from College Station preparations for this train arriving. Can you tell us something about it? As the train arrives there, what happens?
Well, what's going to be happening is it's going to pull just past the area of Kyle Field along Wellborn Road there. And what's going to happen is they've got a platform that has been built there, and the train will stop and it will be unloaded. Once the train arrives, the people who are going to be receiving him are going to be family and friends, but also students from the Bush School. That is the school that was established at Texas A&M University when they built the Presidential Library. And every single student from the school has been invited to receive the president. I was talking with a couple of students yesterday, and they've told me they've been there for a year and a half already. It's a 2-year program. By far, today will be the greatest lesson, and it will be taught at a moment of silence, because they will be seeing the man who bears the school's name in front of him, coming home to where he will be buried. and they will be reminded of his service to this nation, his character, his integrity. And that is what they say has always been the greatest lesson that they have seen at that school. They're going to bring him along from the train, put him into the hearse. They're going to roll him out of that location there, and he's going to go along George Bush Drive. It will be the same drive that the First Lady drove down back in April. They'll make a couple of zigzag turns into the Presidential Library, and from there it goes completely private. And it is at that moment that the Bush family will be able to say goodbye to the patriarch.
Man, I knew I asked the right guy. Let me ask you one more question, Mario.
Sure, go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Why? I have never heard why, and you may not know this either. Why did 41 choose Texas A&M as a spot to build his presidential library?
You know, if I'm going to talk about the story, I hear the train, I hear a helicopter, so the train might be coming here shortly, so we want to focus in on capture that shot here. I'm going to talk to you about that, but I'm going to go ahead and step away and let our photographer, Ty, grab the image. The reason why he picked that location, Bill, is because Texas A&M wanted to build a presidential library, but at the same time, they also wanted to build the school, and that was a point that the president appreciated very much because of the fact that it was a school dedicated to his type of mantra in life, which was a school dedicated to policy, to service, and it was a way for his legacy to live on and impact young minds moving forward in society. University of Houston, Rice University, they were involved in the mix. However, Texas A&M was the one that put out the school from the very get-go, and it is also the school that keeps the spirit of Texas alive in the eyes of many. And it is that spirit and those values that has been expressed there for decades that the president appreciated. He may have graduated from Yale, but in the end, he was a member of the Texas A&M family, and they were very happy to embrace his library, his museum, as well as his school back in 1997 when they opened their doors, Bill.
Very, very edifying. Thank you very much, Mario. I knew I'd ask the right guy about that, too. I think the train's headed your way. We're going to let you take it away here.
It is. Okay, that's no problem. We're obviously looking down towards the south here, and you're starting to see another helicopter make its way up the rail line as this train heads north. And the crowd is all looking down the tracks. They realize this is the moment that they have waited for. It is their time to say goodbye. And honestly, there's no better backdrop for me on this day than to be right here. When you look at this crowd and the architecture of old Texas, you can hear one of the choppers flying overhead. That's a security chopper. You have a few others here as well that are capturing the images from high above. And that is the first horn that we hear right there of that Union Pacific 4141 with members of the media, family, and the former president on board. As it rolls by, you're going to want to look for that train with the American flag right in the middle. It's got a window, plexiglass. It is lit up. We hope to capture a shot of the former president as he rolls on through. We anticipate that the train will be slowing down here as it cuts through town.
This is one of those moments where everybody says, you remember when? Do you remember where you were when? And you get to say, I was standing in town in Navasota when?
You'll never forget it, Dominique. Everyone who has seen this train or has seen this week play out before them in person or on television, it is memorable and it will not be forgotten. You're hearing the whistles from the Union Pacific 4141 continuing to sound in the distance. I see another chopper about half a mile away from here, which gives me the impression that it is moving into town.
It is, Mario, and in fact, the train is slowing down because it is getting closer.
Hear the whistle?
I hear it right there. It's glad to hear. I'll let them watch. You'll see people here react in a moment when I tell them. It's slowing down from what we can see. It's slowing down. Great. Yeah, great is how one woman responds right now. That was a question that many were asking. How quickly would it be going by? And I told a few of them this morning that it was going to be going by very slowly.
Yes, and very respectful for all the people who've taken the time to be in attendance for this historic event.
Another railroad man noted that trains have to slow down as they go through towns, but it serves a double purpose.
This cool, wet Texas day as we look at the rain-spattered glass of the camera from Sky 2. People bundled up with umbrellas above and flags in their hand.
Those train whistles are getting louder, Dominique and Bill.
That's right. It's getting closer to you, Mario. We can see it.
Having lived in the Northeast, you miss that sound of the whistle. You hear it often, and again, this is a reflection of the 41st president who grew up in the Northeast and whose life was influenced at a young age by trains.
By the way, Mario, Charlie Daly says, please let Mario Diaz know one does not need to come from the Northeast to know about trains. Houston's Union Station is where we came and went from, picked up family and friends, but he's talking about a long time ago because
I wouldn't mind if we turned back the clock, Bill.
Yeah, there used to be a train that ran through here called the Lone Star and went from here to Chicago and stopped at all the little towns in between. It was a commuter train.
Yeah.
People used it for.
A page from the past.
Well, and here we are in the future talking about a bullet train that might be going through Texas from Dallas down to Houston. And a lot of people would like to see that infrastructure, once again, of the rail lines taking a prominent role in parts of the nation. But what a turnout here in this tiny town, a town that is just a location where many drive through, but today a huge crowd to see the sight that you're about to see in just a few seconds.
And I remember, Mario, as we were setting up for these stories, a lot of our reporters were going to these small towns in the days leading up to this, and they were all saying, boy, you know, we're anticipating thousands of people. We've got to start working on our roads and traffic flow and blocking things off, and, you know, they knew to expect something big.
No doubt. It is just that. It is big, and it might be cloudy and there might be some few drops, but here comes sunshine roaring down the tracks, Dominique and Bill.
Indeed it is, and our camera you can't see, but the Sky 2 camera is poised right there on the rail car carrying our 41st president, plexiglass on both sides so that people lining the tracks can easily see the casket.
Hold your mic out for us, Mario, so we can hear people comment as it comes through. Mario, if you can hear me, feel free to get reaction from folks around you if you can.
You know, there are people there that were very excited. Ma'am, what'd you think? I'm going to talk to you. We're live on Channel 2. What'd you think?
Oh, it was amazing. It was just a lifetime event.
Did you see the former First Lady waving on this side?
I did see her.
Right there too. She had the biggest smile on her face.
She did. That was exciting to get to see her mom.
How poignant was it to see the former president and the soldier that was standing at guard?
I am the daughter of a military veteran, so it is just wonderful. I just can't explain the feeling that it is. Very touching, very touching. He was such a true American.
Ma'am, what was it like for you? Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, what was it like for you?
It made me cry.
Oh, you don't need to cry, ma'am.
is history, and it made me cry. It was beautiful.
It was.
It was absolutely beautiful.
I hope those are tears of joy.
I did. It was wonderful.
What'd you think of the former First Lady, ma'am?
Oh, Barbara Bush was a wonderful.
She was waving to the crowd. She was waving so happily, and the family was up top. When you saw the former president, what went through your mind?
What a wonderful man.
It's a beautiful day, isn't it?
The weather is perfect for this season. You know what? It's kind of a sad day, but it's a celebration of a wonderful life.
All right, well, give me a hug, because I know that you could probably use one right now, okay?
Yeah,
You take
because
care.
I'm a brand new widow.
Oh, I'm so sorry, ma'am. I'm so sorry for that, okay? I'm so sorry, okay?
But you know what? My husband was a wonderful veteran, and he lived a good life.
And we thank you for his service, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, you take care. Be careful getting out of here, ma'am, okay? Just one of the individuals that came here today to see the president. I'm going to try to talk to some other people. Let me talk to the shoemakers. Darlene, I know you guys came here this morning. Pardon me, sir. I'm going to have you just step away from him. Darlene, camera's right there. What was it like?
It was a very moving moment. I had no idea that the car would be open where you could actually see the casket, and it was very touching.
Yeah. And little tears going to your eyes.
It was. I can't lie.
On this side, we had the former First Lady, Barbara Bush. She was
waving and smiling, and I think they did feel the love that we were sending to them.
Yeah, it was, or excuse me, Laura Bush. Forgive me, Laura Bush. Yeah, I'm getting, forgive me, I got caught up a little bit in the moment. You're right, Laura Bush, forgive me, but it was very special.
It was a wonderful and special moment.
Yeah, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bruce, what was it like for you?
Oh, it was great. I wouldn't have missed it.
Yeah, it was, we saw Laura Bush there waving. You saw the family waving. You saw a family that was grateful for everyone to show up here today.
That's correct. It was a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and we're glad we were able to come up here.
Memorable moment. Again, I'm sorry?
Well, yeah, I'm just you caught me unawares last time.
But you're out of words this time, too.
Yeah, I am. I just can't believe it. I'm just glad I'm here. It's lovely. Lovely to see the family.
A moment you'll never forget.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Go to my grave. Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Very nice meeting you. It will endure the test of time, no doubt. And again, it was Laura Bush who was out there, who was waving to the entire crowd here. You saw huge smiles on her face, as well as the faces of other family members here, Bill and Dominique. A very touching moment. Two quick takeaways that I had from this, though, was that at one moment you actually saw a member of the Secret Service. His eyes were like a hawk, even though this train was moving at a relatively slow speed. Faster, though, than anyone can try to approach it. He was watching that crowd very carefully as it was moving through here. And then, obviously, the moment that everyone here waited for was that moment when you looked through that plexiglass and you saw the former president lying inside of the car there with the honor guard around him. College Station is just a few miles up the road. He'll be there in a few minutes. And then from there, it will be that short trip over to the Presidential Library, Bill and Dominique.
Well, Mario, you're talking about the soldier standing guard at the casket. I don't know if you have a monitor there, but we're showing it right now. We have a shot from inside the baggage car that is carrying the president's casket.
What a moving photo that is.
Yeah, his body as a former commander-in-chief has been guarded every moment along the way. Beautiful shot.
It is a beautiful shot. Just the pride and the honor, the respect from both inside and outside that car. Wonderful.
I was going to say it was.
I did not expect this shot. That's great. I'm glad we got it. Go ahead, Mario.
Yeah, I was going to say it was just so moving to be in that position and actually see it, because we'd heard about all of the details that went into that particular car, and you're figuring, well, how well can you see it? when it's moving at the speed that it's moving and with the glass. But they had that picture perfect for every individual who came out along this rail line, not only here but elsewhere, to see. It was absolutely picture perfect.
It was, and the train slowed down to what? I mean, maybe 10, 15 miles per hour, so that everybody could catch a glimpse, take their photo, and feel connected to that moment.
We see now that they illuminated the inside of that train, too, to make it better to see for the viewing. Go ahead, Mario.
It was illuminated. It was illuminated, and what you didn't expect here, at least I didn't, was to see the happiness on the faces of the family members. Laura Bush, again, was just a huge smile on her face, and other family members just all smiling and very happy. I think this is probably what they truly wanted at the end of the day, to know that their grandfather, their father-in-law, their father, the patriarch, was going to be celebrated in this manner, and for him to get the appreciation of the man that they loved and the man that they knew so well, to see him be embraced by Texans on this day, it must be so touching to their hearts. And again, you saw it in the smiles on their faces.
You're right, Mario, and the pictures that have been released so far, and we're grateful we've been able to present them on this broadcast, have been incredibly touching. Prior to that photo, we saw the image of Jenna Bush Hager and Barbara Bush waving and greeting the crowd as well. So that highlights what you're talking about, which is that love and appreciation of this family for this community. And when I say this community, the Texas community, because they are Texans. As you know, George W. Bush and his family, he's in Dallas. They've got a ranch out there in Crawford. You know, they are a part of this land and of these people.
Got a quick email here from Richard Rogers, watching from Huntsville, Alabama, worked on the Bush 88-92 campaign and the 93 inauguration. We're getting emails from people all over the country who are watching this, either streaming live on click2houston.com or on their sets at home.
And so this train is now getting closer and closer to College Station. We have an entire crew set up there for that part of the coverage as well. So we'd like to check in with Sophia Beausoleil, who's in College Station. And Sophia, I can imagine the crowds there have been growing since early this morning.
Yes, when we got here early this morning, it was quiet. But then once 9 o'clock hit, there were a lot of folks who wanted to get the best position and started lining up. And everyone is prepared. They all have their American flags. They are ready to pay their respects to the 41st president. And we've met so many people, so many great stories, just like this gentleman, a great veteran. Thank you for talking to us, Dale. We appreciate it. Dale is a professor here at Texas A&M. And why was it important for you to get here so early?
It was important to say goodbye to a member of the greatest generation. His life is very similar to my father's life, and I served under him as my commander-in-chief in Desert Storm. So I had to be here to pay my respects, and of course wanted the best spot to view the train procession. There's so much history from his life, his career, his death, and bringing him home to Aggieland, the way he adopted our university and made it his university too, has done so much for Texas A&M. I love that aspect about it. I love the love life that he and Barbara had, like my wife had, and had to be part of it.
Of course. And I know you were telling me earlier, as a professor when it comes to mechanical engineering, his legacy when it comes to the school, that has impacted you as well, correct? Was it the school or the library that you were able to do some teaching yourself through it?
Oh, yes. The library had the Da Vinci machines exhibits. And teaching mechanical engineering is like, well, hey, this is cool. We're going to go over and actually look at these machines. And our students had to crawl around on the machines and figure out, well, how do these machines work? And in fact, their project was due just last night.
Fitting, perfect timing, right?
Yes, it was.
Well, Dale, thank you so much for speaking with us. And Dale actually took the time to put up flags. He put up a Texas A&M flag, an American flag, and a Texas flag, all representative of the 41st president, him adopting Aggieland as his final resting place. And so many people are excited to see this moment. It is a somber moment, but it is a historic moment. And so let me just kind of walk you through this. We're going to walk
walk over here to the fence. And if you take a look on the other side, you'll see the tracks, and you'll see where members of the Corps are, and the band is there as well. There's also media on the other side. And this is where the train will stop. And the president's casket will be then transported from here to the presidential library. And that's where he will be laid to rest. And as I'm talking to you right now, the rain is starting to pour down. And like I said, it is kind of fitting for today. You know, it's the final part of this journey of the president's final goodbye, as so many people want to say their tributes and pay honor to him, a man who was all about faith, family, and friends. And I spoke with a mom earlier who said, you know what? It was worth taking her kids out of school today because this is a life lesson that you can't necessarily get inside of a classroom. So we've heard so many of those stories, but I'm going to have you all walk with me. And Bobby, we're going to walk down here as I show you kind of the scene. So you'll see all these folks standing along this parking garage. They're not letting people go on top. I know everybody would like that, to have the perfect view, but obviously for security reasons, that's not accessible. But everyone is kind of working with one another to try to get the best spot to see. And everyone has been asking me, where do I go? Where should I go? And from this vantage point, once the train arrives, 4141, we may be blocked because the casket will be taken off from the train on the other side of the tracks. But regardless, it will be an amazing moment. About 2 hours ago, there was what appeared to be a practice train that came through. We heard the horns blowing. It started to slow down, and we saw what appeared to be folks with the Secret Service kind of assessing that situation, getting ready for when the actual locomotive arrives here to College Station. But if you take a look over here, you'll see everyone has their umbrellas up. And I've asked everyone, is the rain a factor? They said absolutely not. This is worth it. This is a once-in-a-lifetime situation, and they all want to be here to pay their respects and honor the president. And I know Jonathan Martinez, he is over at the Presidential Library, and once the casket is taken over there, there will be another ceremony that will take place before the 41st president is laid to rest. But Dominique and Bill, it's just astonishing. I've been saying this to everybody. I'm just so impressed with all the stories. Even when Mrs. Bush passed away, they were just such down-to-earth people. And I'm kind of bummed I didn't get to meet them personally. But I'm glad to hear all these stories because you kind of feel like you know them. And that's what my takeaway is from all of this. Even last night when I went to St. Martin's myself after work, I wanted to pay my respects to the president. It was just a beautiful moment to be a part of. And I think everyone, regardless of party, color, race, gender, everyone can appreciate this because it is a part of our fabric of what makes us Americans. Guys, back to you.
Sophia, I think the Bushes would have been bummed to know they didn't get to meet you.
And I think it's safe to say you do know them. You do.
Yeah,
through your experience and your coverage. So.
Thanks, Sophia. We have two teams at A&M today. They're in College Station. We also have Jonathan Martinez, who I believe is covering the Corps of Cadets.
He's
right?
at the library. Sophia mentioned that he's not too far away at the riser there. So, Jonathan, give us your perspective and let us know what will be taking place.
You know what, Bill and Dominique, since the last time we spoke to you, the rain has picked up, as Sophia just mentioned, and we are still about an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes away from that private burial taking place here. But as I step out of the shot here, I'm going to give you a pretty moving image there. In the rain, the Corps of Cadets have arrived here to welcome home the 41st president to his final resting place. Even in the rain, talk about dedication and commitment, they wait, even so early, knowing that that locomotive is still making its way through those several towns, nearly a dozen or so before it finally gets here. They're still waiting. And that's a commitment and dedication that obviously I think a lot in the stories that we've told over the last couple of days, it really represents the president and why he chose to have his presidential library here, why he wanted to have some roots here as well. You know, this is just part of what's going to be taking place here for a ceremony that's going to happen. Obviously, the Corps of Cadets, some 1,600 members will welcome them. Every branch of the military will be out here. There will be a flyover with 21 aircrafts. One of those aircrafts will also perform that missing man maneuver as well to pay tribute to the president here. And, you know, it was just yesterday that we did speak with some of the students who were also out here for that special air mission 41. In fact, was Air Force One that was carrying President Bush from Washington back to Houston, but made a detour and flew over the Presidential Library a day ahead of his funeral. We spoke to some of the students out here who witnessed that flyover, and they said, you know, it's certainly a moving tribute to him, and we're expecting to see that again. Although it is a private burial, these are the images right now that we are getting to see some of the final moments once the president does arrive here. And I think it should be noted as well, you all have mentioned it in the past, the execution of all these plans. These plans have been in the works for